Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an all-new season of the UK Sim Racing community's Porsche Cup, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today we kick off Season 6 of the Porsche Cup, indeed the 6th rendition. How time has flown and how this series continues to grow ever popular with fanatics of the Porsche Cup car, and indeed those who are not experienced in the car but looking to dabble in a machine from Germany that's a little bit more beastly to control, with the absence of anti-lock braking systems and traction control. I mean, it all comes down to the driver and craft and modulating the car at your own expense. But as our drivers get ready to undertake a new season of racing, well, what better place to kick things off than the Virginia International Raceway today. Located in the heart of the state of Virginia in the United States of America, this circuit is known for its 17 fast-flying corners and also the old oak tree, albeit no longer there, unfortunately cut down in recent times, but still, whilst the tree may be gone, the fundamentals of this circuit have not disappeared, and that is its fundamental nature to be able to create fantastic racing action, albeit a bit of do and die style racing action, with the fact you have to be right on edge all the way through the lap if you want to get the best possible lap time. But of course, when you're running on edge, you're prone to mistakes. If you remember back to Season 5, we saw plenty of mistakes of drivers who are running right up the front and really pushing hard, and could we see some potential stars here today fall and other newcomers rise to the fray. But as we get ready to get underway for rounds 1 and 2, you're tuned live, of course, via the official UKSimRacing YouTube channel, and if you're not subscribed to the channel today, be sure to subscribe in order to be able to stay up to date with all of our latest broadcasts. With regards to this broadcast, it's being brought to you via the UKSimRacing channel, and in the commentary booth you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And speaking of following things, let's follow our way on to the calendar that lies in wait. And with 15 rounds and 8 venues, we have got a packed calendar over the next couple of months. For today is the 23rd of March, and we get underway at the VIR circuit, as it's abbreviated to. But as we look down the calendar there, it is a bit of a different calendar, with the arrival of 2 break weeks in the calendar, whereas conversely back in Season 5, we were absolutely ram-packed all the way through, and those break weeks to account for the official iRacing events such as the 24 Hours of Nürburgring. But after today, our drivers will then be making the way to Italy for the Monza Grand Prix circuit, and that'll be in rounds 3 and 4 on what is there the 30th of March, and the Italian circuit, always a pleasure to see our drivers go racing at, and of course it does quite fit into the heart of a good number of drivers with regards to the concept of Monza Turn 1, but as we've seen in previous renditions of the championship, our drivers have been very skillful at dabbling in the arts of breaking into Turn 1 at Monza and making sure to keep the racing flying all the way from start to finish. Then in rounds 5 and 6, our third venue will see us go to Belgium for everybody's second favourite Belgian circuit, and that is the Circuit Zolder on the 6th of April. On the 13th of April, we make our way to perhaps the more infamous Belgian circuit for rounds 7 and 8, and that is the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. Then we'll be having our first break week before returning for round number 9 on the 27th of April, and you're probably looking at it and thinking, is that a typo, the fact there's only one round listed? Well, you'd be incorrect. It's not a typo. That is correct on screen. We have got the return of our single race round. Of course, you'll remember in Season 4, we had the season finale of the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke, or the combined version of the Nürburgring Grand Prix Strecke and also the Nordschleife Loop, and that makes a return in terms of the combined round, albeit we're not going to be hosting it at the Nürburgring Germany, but instead we are holding it at the Circuit de la Sarthe, also known as Le Mans, in France on the 27th of April, and there the points will be the same in grand total, but of course with only one race available to our drivers in more of an extended feature race, that means the pressure is going to be on, and in the mid-season as well, it means our drivers cannot prepare for a season finale per se. Instead they have to focus on preparing for each and every round. Indeed, the Le Mans round is going to feel awkward compared to all the other rounds, because then for the remainder of the season we return to the sprint and feature race combination format, which of course carries over from Season 5, and rounds 10 and 11 will be taking place in the United Kingdom at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, and that'll be on the 4th of May, and then we do have our second break week before we return for the penultimate venue, and the penultimate pair of rounds in rounds 12 and 13, and that'll be at the Suzuka circuit in Japan on the 18th of May, and well, that circuit is going to be a dicey one, with a relatively narrow raceway and combination of sectors, meaning our drivers will really be put through their test if they're not already, and then our season finale, we return to France for the highly technical Circuit de Nevers-Magny-Cours. And indeed, many of you will remember the circuit playing host to our drivers in what was Season 5 of the series, and Roxanne Marshall in particular, who is back for this season in the silver class, picking up a double win there at Magny-Cours. So I think Marshall may have just brought a smile to her face when she saw Magny-Cours was on the calendar, and it is the season finale on the 25th of May. But indeed, we have got 2 months of racing ahead of us, and we've got 15 rounds of racing action, and let's come to our circuit for today. Well, it is, of course, the Virginia International Raceway full course, located near the town of Alton in Halifax County of the state of Virginia in the US of A. This circuit, as you can see from the circuit map provided to us by iRacing.com, thank you to them for their circuit maps, and of course their wonderful simulator, is a circuit which blends corner sequences of varying natures, whether it be the hairpin at turn at number 1, or alternatively the fast flying sequences at turns 7, 8 and 9, and it blends all these different corner varieties in amongst a number of extended straightaways. And when it puts the two together with regards to turns 7, 8 and 9, or indeed the run and through roller coaster at turns 14 and 14A, and also hog pen at turns 16 through to 17A, that means that this circuit is really going to keep our drivers on their toes, and that's why we picked it as the season opener. But as they make their way across the start finish line and down towards turn number 1, they'll break the way into Horseshoe Corner, while the slower corners on the circuit, and that'll start to set up the tone of direction change for the next few quarters. For making their way through the kicker 2, they'll come into NASCAR bend at turn number 3, before rolling their way into left hook at 4, and coming out to the double right at turns 5 and 5A. Then we see our drivers start to make their way along the snake at turn 6, and this is where the average speed starts to pick up rapidly. Powering their way all the way down towards turns 7, 8 and 9, they'll head up towards South Bend at turn number 10, where it's all about confidence of being able to carry as much speed as possible before they go heavy on the brakes into turns 11 and 12 at Oak Tree Corner, and then powering out down the back straight. That's where we're going to see some of our slipstream assisted passes, but it's all about getting on the throttle as soon as possible coming out of turn number 12 as they head up towards turn at number 14. Along the way to the kink of the straight marking turn number 13, we'll see our drivers break the way into roller coaster corner and then head on through to hog pen to complete the lap and do it all again. Now, as for our rules, of course, the rules have not changed for this season. We're carrying over the same rules set from Season 5, and let's just give you a reminder of what you can expect today. In terms of qualifying, a lone qualifying format shall be used, whereby all of our drivers will take to an isolated instance of the circuit to put in their best possible time, and they will have 8 minutes to do so. There'll be no overtime available, so when the clock strikes 8 minutes, that means all of our drivers go back to the pits, and then they will be qualified for the purposes of the sprint race. Now, as for the races themselves, the races shall commence by a standing start, as is the tradition of the UKSimRacing Porsche Cup, with the sprint race grid being set based on the results of qualifying, and the feature race grid being a partial reverse grid based on the results of the sprint race. But the difference here is the top 8 positions are inverted. And that means, in layman's terms, that the winner of the sprint race will be starting in P8 on the grid for the purposes of the feature, and we work our way downwards through the top 8 finishers of the sprint race, which means the 8th place finisher starts on pole for the purposes of the feature race, and then 9th and downwards will be exactly where they finish in the sprint race. They don't get any potential inertial reversals on the grid there, as we mince our words. Now, there is no mandatory pit stop in either race, whether either the sprint or the feature. If we see a pit stop, it's likely our driver has not taken on enough fuel, or they picked up damage and they need to repair it. And speaking of damage, one fast repair is available in each race. A driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 14 or more instant points in either of the races, but that's enough rules, regulation and everything in between. I know what you're all here for, and we are only a few minutes away from going at racing, and let's take you through our schedule for today. Times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinated Time at UTC. We can see that in just under 8 minutes time we'll be heading into our qualifying session at 8 o'clock this evening, and it will be 8 minutes of qualifying. Of course, as we just mentioned, while our drivers will be looking to put their best foot forward in order to deliver early on in the season and set the tone of what could be their potential qualifying pace, and then they'll make their way to the grid for round number 1, the sprint race, the 12-minute sprint, which will be at approximately 10 past 8. After that, we're taking a brief breather before returning just before 8:30 for the build-up and the gridding process for the feature race, round number 2 today, and that'll be a 30-minute race, of course, 2.5 times the time duration of the sprint race, and our drivers there will have to really balance the art of the craft of pace versus consistency and tyre management in between. And of course, we saw in Season 5 just how quickly the tyres could go off after 15 minutes of racing. We imagine for our drivers when it's 30 minutes of racing, they do have to try and protect the car as much as possible, and also get used to the fact these Porsche 992 machines really change as the fuel comes out the car, more the fact the fuel tank located towards the front rather than the rear. But as we all get ready to go racing, and indeed I hope you're all set right now at home, and if you haven't got yourself a hot beverage or a cool beverage and you've got yourself some popcorn, now's the time to very quickly do so. Well, it is a nice sunny day here today at the Virginia International Raceway, and with 39 degrees at the moment on track and 22 degrees centigrade in terms of ambient temperature, well, there is plenty of heat out on circuit for our drivers to absolutely attack the circuit. And well, for this season, it is the case that we do have a number of returning drivers from previous seasons. Indeed, we can see there on the time tell on the left-hand side, we've got the likes of what is their Black Up Motorsport New Zealand's Corey Lazarus, the fastest driver out on circuit. But we've also got a good number of newcomers for today, including this man. So you may be thinking right now, is that the man, the myth, the legend? It is Hector Gustad, the Ignia Motorsports driver, who of course took the championship crown in the Pro Division I should say the elite division there, the pros of the pros, the elites in the UKSimRacing GT3 League at Season 9, and he's decided to take his craft to the Porsche Cup in the number 37, representing Ignium Motorsports, so keep your eyes out for the Norwegian, because he is definitely going to be one of those drivers who is going to be hammering down the pace from the very start of today all the way to the conclusion. But as he makes his way on around, we can see there our overlay being updated, and we are still loading a little bit of driver data at the moment. We can see a couple of drivers, they're not fully loaded in with regards to their data, but of course it is the season open, and we always do have little data discrepancies, and we are resolving those as quickly as possible. But as we can see here, one driver right now, we're looking to make an early impression, indeed try to go for the championship this season. Roxanne Marshall in the number 26, 24-hour punty people car, and we can saw last season, of course, Marshall really fast out there in the silver class, but not able to stay all the way to the end of the championship and missing out on an opportunity to finish inside the top three. But Marshall definitely be looking to bounce back today immediately and try to make a mark. The Briton, who really has been one of the more consistent drivers in previous seasons, but unfortunately it has either been a bit of bad luck in seasons prior to season 5 or just not being able to make the final race of the season, and therefore costing her dear. But we can see there the split in terms of the field, it is roughly 50-50 in terms of gold drivers and silver drivers, and that means that we are going to have plenty of battling action. It doesn't matter up and down the field which drivers and battling whom, you are expecting the drivers to be fighting hard all the way through. And of course, with regards to the classes, with there being gold and silver classes, that means in terms of our drivers championship, we are expecting there to be 2 focuses here for our drivers. They're individual class championships, but also we then do have the teams championship, which goes over the top of that, and some teams are spread across classes, and meanwhile other teams are focused in a particular class. But as we also do say hello to a good number of you in the chat there, and we say hello to Ignium Motorsport JB in particular. I do believe that is Jakob Boschov, unless I'm very much mistaken. And good evening to you, good sir. I hope you're doing well. And if you haven't said hi in the chat, don't be shy. Feel free to say hi, for the simple reason we don't buy here at UKSimRacing. We welcome everybody, and indeed we've had a good number of newcomers here, all trying to try out the Porsche 992 Cup car. It is going to be for them a little bit of a winning experience, but that's the thing about this machine as well. It is a very tricky car to drive at the best of times, as Marshall gives us a demonstration there, getting it wrong, coming through turn at number 10, but catching the car as it goes to the grass. And the thing about this circuit in particular is it is highly punishing when a driver gets it wrong and falls off the circuit onto the grass, because most of the time the grass slopes away from the tarmac surface, and that means you start to roll downhill, and as the car gradually comes way downhill, it becomes very difficult to bring the car back. But as we get a refresh there of our overlay and more data being loaded, of course, I do believe we have 33 drivers in attendance, and that is an almost all-time high. It may actually be an all-time high for the Porsche Cup. I think the organisers will have to clarify that for me after today, but if I'm not mistaken, we have got an absolutely packed field, and with only 3 minutes left before we go into qualifying, we see Joe Newman from SimRacing making a return in the 97 car in the gold class as he comes on down. And I guess the big question is for this season, what exactly is new then? Because we're staying with the same race formats, albeit we are bringing back, of course, the extended feature race for one of our rounds as taken from season 4. And we can see how we still do have the gold and the silver classes, and we also have the team's championship. Well, a couple of new things that we should talk about. We do have now the driver of the day vote. It will be on each and every broadcast. You have the ability to vote for your driver of the day, and that will be made available as of approximately 10 minutes into the feature race, or the second race of the day. And the extended feature race will be looking at least halfway into the race, and that's when we'll make it available. But keep your eyes out in the chat. We will be talking a little bit more about it later, providing you a link to vote for your driver of the day. But we're not going to give you the opportunity to vote just yet, of course, because it's a little bit early in the day before we do open up the voting. But as we do see Giles Phillips here, the Phillips GP driver, making his way on down on the ground and coming out of turn number 12. A newcomer to the series, the gold driver there, and as he heads on through, in fact, into the pit lane there. I think that's the incorrect pit lane for Phillips, unless I'm mistaken, as he comes to a brief halt, and indeed they're just ducking away off of the main road surface. Perhaps taking a little look at the car there, but he's not being looked after in that pit lane, as we are running the full course, not one of the shorter courses. But meanwhile, as we do look to Haroldas Jotatus, we can see here the Lithuanian from Over the Limit Racing making their way on down towards turn number 1, and another newcomer in the 45 car. And we have got plenty of newcomers here. Old blood meets new blood, and you know what that means when you do mix the two bloods. You're going to see fireworks for the simple reason you have the established names who are looking to continue their established form, and well, the ultimate name in that, unfortunately not on circuit at the moment, but we'll see him in qualifying. Philip Hammer, of course, our reigning champion in the gold class from season 5, is back for season 6. He's running the number 1 door number, and that means, of course, that he is the man to beat, and Lee Holmes was one of many drivers looking to beat Philipp Hammer, but the Team Germany driver versus the ATEC Tech Purple driver, well, Holmes wasn't on the pace by comparison last season, but where he was by comparison was in the consistency stakes, albeit Hammer was able to match him for consistency left, right and centre. But as we continue to see our drivers getting themselves set here, we'd just like to take a moment, of course, we see Steve Hobbs make his way through for FR20 Sim Racing in the number 7 car, and another debutant for the series in the Silver Class LP, and he's currently P16. We'd just like to take a moment to remind you that if you have been a long-time follower of UK Sim Racing, if you've ever wondered how you could potentially give back to the community, did you know there is a quick way to do so via affiliates? Because we at UK Sim Racing are affiliated with multiple sim racing and real-world motorsport companies, including Swello and Meta Sim Racing Coaching, Race Anywhere and Demon Tweaks. And if you do head to our website, that is uksimracing.co.uk today, and you'll see it pop up on screen very shortly. Well, we haven't quite got our affiliate button available at the moment because we have recently redesigned the website, but what we can tell you is that there is a button at the top right, then you can see it, which is to our Discord. Now, why would you want to join our Discord? Well, firstly, if you ever want to compete in any of our series, you need to be a member of our Discord, but also because on our Discord, some of our affiliates have provided discount codes which are available only there, and if you do use those, well, you get a discount on your purchase, which works out brilliantly for you. We at UK Sim Racing get a kickback from your purchase, and because we are a non-profit organisation, all of our affiliate earnings shall be invested back into the community to fund future series, including future renditions of the Porsche Cup. We've also got the GT3 League Season 10 coming up later this year, and other series we have planned for later in 2023. Do remember, a little purchase can go a long way in supporting UK Sim Racing, but as we now look back to our live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for qualifying, and well, now all of our drivers will look to make their early mark here, as we see Steve Hobbs heading on around, and also Sean Cranley-Swash for HW Racing, representing the nation of Canada. Here is the number 17 driver, and as he comes on through, well, the thing for everybody now, it's the first qualifying session of the season. Everybody will be keeping their eyes out for what the lap times look like, and this is where you start to get that feeling of where is your pace relative to your peers. Now, of course, if you're a veteran of this series and you're around some of the veterans, you'll know where your established pace was from the previous seasons, and therefore where you perhaps fit in. But when you're a newcomer such as Cranley-Swash, alternatively Ricardo Jimenez, as we see here the Spaniard making his way on down towards turn number 10, well, the thing for these drivers is they'll know how much pace they have, but they won't necessarily know the pace of their competitors. They'll see the pace in the practice session, because you can never read too much into practice for a simple reason. You don't know how much fuel is in a car that a driver's driving in practice, but you know in qualifying everybody's going to be running as little fuel as possible in order to get their best possible lap times. And Jimenez, one of many here, started to get himself set and wound up, as we do say hello there to Rob Armstrong, Nathan Scott, Marvin Cruz, and also Matty Wild in the YouTube chat. And as we do see Jimenez making his way on down the backstretch and into turn 14 very shortly, we'll be jumping on board with one of our drivers for a reference lap. And we do have Aaron Tressler at the same point at the moment, making his way on through it, albeit slight connectivity issues there for Tressler. He'll hope those calm down in short order, but as he comes on through and on towards the final couple of quarters here, it would only be fair if we have Philipp Hammer give us the first reference lap of the season. He is, of course, our defending champion. So making his way down towards turn number 1, bringing the car into the right-hand side here for the start-finish line to cut the distance to turn 1. And as he heads up into top gear, getting ready to brake, he brakes to the 3 board there, the 150-metre marker, coming all the way down to second gear, and as he brings it out 46 miles an hour, keeping the car over to the right to settle it down for turns 2 and 3, as he now lets the car fly out to the right before turning it tight to the apex and onto the brakes immediately for turn 3. Very nice and early, set the car for rotation, and now powering out into turns 4 and 5. Here the left into right as he drops the second gear, got to keep the car in the middle of the road as he sets up the right-hander, second gear still, but as he powers out now in third gear, mounts the throttle through the right-hander at turn number 5A, as he now powers his way all the way towards turns 6, 7 and 8. Well, having cleared 6 at Snake, now he heads into 7, 8 and 9 and getting ready to charge on down. You can see the small undulations in the road just unsettling the car, but Hammer not unsettled at all as he makes his way through the complex sequence, and now coming into turn number 10 before bringing it down and into the uphill braking zone for turn number 11, braking 150 metres from apex once again, down to second gear, let the car go deep, take a V-shape approach here as he attacks turn 12 at Oak Tree, and now powering his way out, it's flat out all the way out towards turn 14 now, completely sticking to his guns here and hoping that he's been able to carry as much speed as possible, return to full throttle as soon as possible out of 12 as he comes on down there. Indeed, it is Hammer time, as Robert Armstrong says there, as he makes his way up towards turn number 14, and now coming from 164 miles now, breaking his way all the way down gingerly as he goes. Notice the amount of trail braking going in there, just letting the car settle down to second gear, and now back on the throttle once again as he makes his way towards the final couple corners into left-hander of 16, now into turn 17 and 17A as he comes through the double right here, third gear up to fourth gear, nice early upshift there to settle the car and go full throttle to the exit, and that is a lap of the VIR circuit. And as he comes to a timing line here, what's it going to be for Hammer on his first lap of the day? We were expecting him to be fast, but how fast will he be? It's P2 on a 47.406, and we can see Trutatus there slightly faster at the moment by 300ths, and that is half the qualifying session already done after the first flying laps come on in. They've not got much time here, and I think for some drivers right now they might be starting to just raise an eyebrow with regards to the fact that with the time available they really need to hit those laps as soon as possible. But as we continue to see time trickle on here, we are loading a little bit more driver data in the background, and we have just recently had Liam Whittingham join the race lobby and making his debut in the series as well. We look forward to seeing how he gets on, and we will very shortly have our overlay refresh as a result. We do apologise for that, ladies and gentlemen, but we will also look to solve our silver drivers in short order and see how they are getting on in the qualifying session. But of course, the thing about this circuit, as we said earlier, is a major test of confidence early on in the season, and that's the thing we'll be watching out for here. Who has that confidence to be able to carry all the speed they can from corner to corner, indeed from straight to straight, and if they get it right, then they'll be on to the ultimate lap. And Hammer really has gone for that ultimate lap straight away, as we do load Whittingham's data there into our overlay, and therefore now we do have a grand total of, I think, 34 drivers in attendance, as we do see Alistair Hatcher heading on down there in the ATEC Racing Cyan machine, and he is currently in at P24 overall, a P10 in the silver class. But who is the fastest driver in the silver class currently, I hear you ask? Well, it is none other than the FR20 Racing's with Steve Hobbs. He makes his way into his turns at 14 and 14A, and will only right now by the smallest of margins. And you can see Marshall at less than 200ths of Hobbs' time. Marshall into the pit lane, however, and I think for Marshall that will be her qualifying session done and dusted, and Hobbs on his final lap now, given the amount of time remaining. In fact, he'll get one more lap in, he'll creep another lap as he heads to the timeline. He'll just have over 2 minutes to go as he crosses the line. Hammer has gone provisional pole over on in the gold class, but meanwhile Hobbs, has he improved even further? Well, I think as we see the times coming in, Phillips has improved to P5, but Hobbs moves to P12 there and puts Jimenez between himself and Marshall, so he's given himself a little bit of a buffer now, and that's the key thing, of course, in the silver class. You want to try and out-qualify a couple of golds to give yourself space to the silver drivers behind you. You don't want to be in a mass silver pack, but it's very interesting to see how on that timing board we have got the majority of the gold drivers ahead of the majority of the silver drivers. We've got very little intermingling here, and that goes to show you, firstly, the classes have been matched up very well. Indeed, congratulations to our admin Matty Wild for setting up the classes and getting them practically spot on by the looks of things. But also on top of that, that means we are really going to have tooth and nail racing between our drivers in their classes from the outset, and that's what we love to see as we see the other FR20 sim racing machine of Basson making their way up towards what is turns 10 very shortly. But powering on down here, of course, full confidence and full attack on this final lap. He's not got long and he can't afford to make a single mistake at this point, because a mistake would be very costly. And when in P19 or it's P3 in the class, he'll be looking to see him get a little bit closer to Marshall in order to give Hobbs a little bit of support, as now heading into turns 11 and 12. A small lock up there on the front right brake. We saw a bit of brake dust kick up, but as he comes through 12, now committing to the throttle, coming on down on the round and up towards 14 he goes. And as we can see there, Nathan Scott saying makes it look so easy, and I think that was in reference to Hammer's onboard reference lap. And indeed, when you look at the picture of our drivers here, how smooth they're driving all around, it does look so simple, but the amount of concentration, indeed the amount of physical exertion that goes in, they may be in the simulators, but much like running on a treadmill for a marathon, whilst it may not be completely real, all the emotions and physicality that comes with it is entirely real in sim racing. And as Hammer goes even faster at the top of the board there at 46.886, we meanwhile look to Corey Lazarus heading towards the end of his current qualifying lap. The Blackout Motorsport New Zealand team back in full force, not just Lazarus but also Samuel K. Sproul, and as he heads to the timeline here, he'll just get the lap in. He's currently P12. We think that Hammer has taken pole over on in the gold class, and for Hobbs it's going to be silver pole of P15. Lazarus just gets across the line in time, and I think it will count for Lazarus, and he does improve, but it's not enough to move up from P12, but he leaves it to last minute, and it's time for the grid for round number 1. So this is how they line up for our first race of the season. Philip Hammer from Team Germany takes pole position ahead of Over Limit Racing's Haroldas Jotatas, who is at 3/10 off. There's Emil Koopmans and Alex Peregrina, who line up on the second row for Apex Missers and Avutada Racing respectively. Ignium Motorsports' Heckling Rustad starts off our third row, joined by Ricardo Jimenez for Avutada Racing. And then on the fourth row we have the gold pair of Cameron Willesey for Willesey Racing and Phillips GP's Giles Phillips. On row 5 it's Lee Holmes for ATIT Racing Team Purple, joined by Blackout Motorsport New Zealand Samuel Sproul. And then we have Ryan Walker for Satellite Racing and Corey Lazarus on Blackout Motorsport New Zealand on the 6th row. On row number 7, we have the pair of Rob Zelby for Shell V-Power Racing Team and Simman Racing's Joe Newman, before we come to our silver pole sitter of Steve Hobbs for FR20 Sim Racing, who lines up on the 8th row, joined by Roxanne Marshall in the end. Congratulations to the pair for locking out that row, and it's going to be close between them in the run down towards turn 1. Chris Cole from DC Sim Racing lines up on the 9th row, joined by his gold peer of Team Germany's Alexander Wilfert, and then we have Lewis Willesey from Tresla Motorsport, joined by Night and Day Racing Steve Kershaw on the 10th row. P21 goes to Wayne Basson for FR20 Sim Racing, joined by ATIT Purple's Glenn Humberstone, and then we have the pair of Aaron Tresla and Sean Cranley Swash line up together on row at number 12. And as we continue our way on down here, we can see it's Sean Dobie for Clicks Racing and FR20 Sim Racing's Craig Tilliston on row at number 13, Jason Mumford and Joe Pinder on row 14, and then we have the pair of Alistair Hatcher and Chris Edison on row 15, Jack Ward and David Biggerdike on row at number 16, and Liam Whittingham and Craig Shield complete our grid. But as we get ready to go racing, we've only got 20 seconds to go here in the countdown procedure, and as we do reload the overlay in order to give you the circuit map in the top right corner of your screen there, it does seem to have tried to escape, but we bring it back, and we are only waiting for a couple of drivers here. They only have 2 minutes to grid up, but the gridding process is complete, and we get the proceedings underway. One red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out, and away we go for a new season of the Porsche Cup hosted by UKSimRacing. As Philip Hammer gets a slow start, and John Tartas tries to go round the outside in the run to turn 1. We've got a driver on the grass in the background. Defending, I think that's Peregrino, as they make the way into the opening corner. And as they all come on through here, there's contact already between multiple drivers, and it looks as though a number of drivers going a bit deep on cold brakes. And we'll take a look back and evaluate what exactly happened shortly. But as everybody makes the way on through, John Tartas still battling hard with Hammer in the run into turn number 4. And as they come on out here and up towards the left into right, they go of 4-5, where you can see behind him, Koopman's going on the offensive for Apex Missers, as now Jotatas is able to break away. The Lithuanian absolutely jumping to life as they come out of turn 5 and make the way down towards 7, 8 and 9. But as they all go line to stern now, no real opportunity to be able to go on the offensive here as they come up towards the fast lane sequence of corners. They've escaped the snake, but the thing of this snake train now is the fact that a number drives out of position, and plenty gain and plenty lose now, as Craig Shield here, one of the biggest gainers, gaining 12 places overall, 7 in the silver class. And as he tries to battle hard here versus one of his peers, and now I believe it's contact with, oh goodness me, I think that was David Biggerdike who's coming to contact with him. The ATEC Cyan driver goes around onto the grass, but he brings it back together. Oh no, he doesn't, as he hits the tyre barrier and the car ends up on his roof. And I do hope he's okay, but it's all gone wrong for him. But meanwhile, Chris Eddersford, the privateer from UKSimRacing, battling side by side with Biggerdike as they make the way and found. In fact, I think that's Alex Peregrina as he heads on down, and not Biggerdike. We apologise for the mistake there as they head on through. And indeed, that was contact between the ATEC team at Cyan car and Peregrina moments ago, and now Eddersford falling behind as they make the way up towards turn 14. But as they head on down towards the next braking zone, meanwhile we look up to the front of the field, and after one lap of racing, it's Haroldas Jotatas who is leading the way ahead of Philip Hammer by a margin of 6/10. They charge down towards turn number 1 once again, heading into the braking zone. It's Jotatas ahead of Hammer, followed by Koopmans, and then Cameron Willesey P4, followed by Holmes P5. Then it's Gustav P6, Giles Phillips on his debut P7 getting 1 place off the line, followed up by Brian Walker P8 for Satellite Racing, as we see Walker there falling back slightly but staying in the hunt. Corey Lazarus moves up to P9, will move up the inside there, Ricardo Jimenez, and that completes the top 10. All gold drives, and then your silver leader after the opening lap is none other than Wayne Basson, the FR20 Sim Racing driver from the United Kingdom, having a brilliant start. But we've got more drive occurring further back, as in fact I think we've got a number of drives off at turn 1 once again, and Eddersford here making ground as David Biggerdike meanwhile also getting through, and then we have Joe Newman tucked in behind, and a number of gold drives really losing out as we've got a driver off there. That's Glenn Humberstone who's gone on round, and as he brings it back on there, he's going to have to bring it on very gradually given the fact he's rejoining practically to the racing line, and Steve Hobbs there has to go round the outside to the inside of turns always 4 and 5, and he gets the move done there versus Humberstone. But we've got plenty to unpick on that opening lap, and given the amount of time we have racing and how much the action is carrying on here, I don't think we're going to get it all covered. But as they make the way on through here, everybody calms down, but you can see behind Jack Ward at the back of this group for Willis Racing absolutely itching to try and make a move, but then having to back off with Sprout tucked in behind Marshall, and these 5 drivers all at the moment trying to play musical chairs with one another in terms of finding their way past and getting up further towards more places. But meanwhile, as we look further up the road, as we can see here, the quintet breaking the way into Oak Tree, no change of position, and meanwhile one gold driver who's trying to pick his way through. It's Avatardus Racing from Spain, Peregrina, as he makes his way up towards turn 14, and in P13 now, what is in gold class P11, he's picked his way past Craig Tilliston, but he's still got more ground to go before he gets after Ricardo Jimenez in the battle for P10 in class, and overall he's got 2 more places to gain. Meanwhile, we look further back to Roxanne Marshall. We're battling a bit of contact there between Humberstone and Marshall goes round, and it's all going wrong for the 24-hour Punty people driver early on today, but still there are 2 rounds of racing here, not just one, and whilst it may not work out in race number 1, it can always work out in race number 2. But as we continue to creep forward here into the third of this race, we're completed, and we look to Jason Mumford meanwhile trying to hold off Lewis Willisey as the 2 silver drivers battle for P23 overall, and Willisey trying to go around the outside here into turn number 1. It's going to be bold from Willisey to do so. Mumford just simply needs to stay on the inside line and make sure to give the space, but at the same time not be over considerate, and as he makes Swan out, nails the defence there as he comes into turns 2 and 3. But coming on to the brakes here, we've got drivers around, and that is Chris Eddersford, and I believe another driver as well has been in contact with him. I think Sean Dobie has also fallen foul of a bit of an incident there. We're not 100% sure, to be fair, but we know that Eddersford's been caught up in the mix, and with that has dropped down the order. But as our drivers make the way on down, we can see here Mumford right now under major pressure as we ride on board the gearbox of the Britain, and will right now with Willisey all over his back and looking for the move. We imagine Lewis Willisey wanting to follow in the footsteps of Cameron Willisey, as of last season, of course, with Cameron Willisey being right up there in the gold class, his debut in the gold class in season 5 in the Embryon on home side, the top 3 in the championship. Meanwhile, Lewis Willisey trying to finish as high as possible in the silver class this season to get that promotion to the gold class, but Mumford here continues to frustrate Willisey. He goes a little bit deep, however, it's a lock up through Oak Tree as they pound their way on out. We're still very close as Willisey, but this is where we see the open setups coming to play with regards to the downforce on the cars. But Willisey here looking for the move. He's going to go around the outside of Mumford. Mumford defends, tries to squeeze Willisey as much as possible. I think Willissey's going to get the nose ahead come the run into the braking zone. The markers are coming up, and Lewis Willisey gets the move done for which P8 in the silver class, or alternatively P22 on circuit overall, as they make the way on through and towards the end of this lap. But meanwhile, looking from drivers further down the order to drivers a bit further up the order, we look to Aaron Tress there, who's had a bit of an off in his return. In fact, I think he's just had an off track and he's having to bring it back together, and it's very narrow there as he tries to navigate his way to defend versus Mumford. Mumford trying to hold on the inside, but Tressler here with the overspeed on corner exit and will be able to fend off Mumford as they make the way into turn 1 once again. Half the race complete, still half of it to go, plus the overtime on the final lap, and as they break the way on down here, well, Mumford takes a little bit of a sneak peek but can't quite find it, and Steve Hodge just tucked in behind us. Meanwhile, Jack Ward here looking for the cutback versus Eddersford into turn 1, but Eddersford parking initially on apex but overcooks it slightly, but Ward not able to make amends, and as they make the way towards turn number 3, they stay as they are. But of course, we spent a lot of time looking at our silver drivers, and we continue to do so as now Ward goes in and Eddersford there getting caught out on the inside, and Ward making it look simple in the 48 car as he moves up to what for him is P25 overall, but P11 in the silver class more importantly. And now we look up to our gold drivers, and we can see here in the battle for P4 where it's Karen Willisey from Willisey Racing, the Scotsman right now, keeping Holmes, Kristad and Giles Phillips at bay as the quartet make their way down towards turn number 14 once again. And meanwhile, Koopmans is 1.4 seconds up the road and gradually sauntering off to a kilter as they make their way up towards turn 14. And as they can come down to the brakes here, Willisey gets it wrong but catches the car in time. It's going to be one pass there for Holmes, but Kristad forced out a little bit wide, and as a result not able to come on through. It's Willisey defending his right to the line, and as they make the way down into turn 16 and 17, Kristad right now trying to pick a way through. And I think still acclimatising to the Porsche Cup car compared to the GT3 that we all know him for. But as he makes his way down towards turn number 1, I think Kristad here as we ride on board, really going to be looking for this move, trying to go around the outside under braking. Well, as he comes down on the brakes, he'll have to give the space. Keep your eyes on the right-hand side of the camera. You will see a little bit of a Porsche alongside very shortly. Or will you? In fact, there is Willis as they come through, trying to go around the outside, but not making it work in the end. Phillips just behind, meanwhile, also trying to get into this fight. And Gustad here between a rock and a hard place. And when you've got a very narrow road surface to play with on average over the majority of the lap, then it does mean that for Gustad right now, he's really got to pick his fights and get it right. But coming out of turn 5 and into the snake of 6, well, as he powers up through the gearbox here, very close. He can almost reach out and touch the rear wing of his adversary, but heading up towards 7, 8 and 9 very shortly. There's no way through here as he runs it into top gear and gets ready to lift off, but stay in the toe. This will unsettle the aero balance of the car, of course, and just make it a little bit more tricky to turn on in. But into turn 10, you can see there the dirty just washing the front end out, causing him to understeer a little bit. As he heads onto the brakes of turns 11 and 12 here, staying right in the slipstream, staying well close now as they make the way out. But it's a little bit of a mistake there, a bit of oversteer, creeps in off of the corner exit, and Gustad falls back as he heads on down and now loses the run on Willisey this time around. But meanwhile, behind Corey Lazarus trying to chase after Satellite Racing's Ryan Walker, the Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver, staying close. And well, can he fathom an opportunity here? It's less than 10th now as they get ready to bounce to the braking zone. Lazarus thinks he's got it on the inside here. Meanwhile, Walker just simply says no, you haven't, and runs the corner. But as they make the way through, he goes overly deep. But now we'll see here the Satellite Racing driver will defend hard on the inside. Lazarus tries to go all the way round, but in the end has to back out. There's only room for one by the time they get towards the entry apex of turn 16, and Lazarus there making himself known to Walker, but Walker definitely also making known his defensive capabilities. But as they make the way up towards turn 1 this time, they go onto a 6th lap of racing, and Lazarus still there, less than a 10th as he crosses the timeline. Made to look round the outside here as Walker covers the inside closely, but as they break the wound down, Lazarus looking for a cutback. He saw early on that Walker was prone to going deep under braking. Lazarus has got the run here in the battle for what is P8 in the gold class, and as they make the way up towards turn number 3, he's going to go round the outside at 2 and gets the door shut there just in time before Walker's able to come back. A nice move from Lazarus, but great defending from Walker as well. But in the end, it was the unstoppable force at Lazarus that managed to break on through. But as we look back up towards your leaders here, let's not forget about them. Geraldus Jortatus right now, the over limit racing driver, continuing to hold on to lead here with Hammer close behind him. We've never really seen in the sprint races based on season 5 when Philip Hammer made his debut, we've never seen Hammer have to chase the lead down the sprint. He's always been the driver on pole and just run away with the proceedings, whereas today this is definitely a very different tone. And to be fair, we're seeing the very best from both drivers here, and that's what we love to see. But I think right now Hammer might be looking at this and thinking, okay, it may not be as straightforward from the outset as he perhaps thought, as they make the way up towards turn number 14. But then again, could he be pacing himself for the final lap? Could he have been doing the analysis over the last couple of laps and thinking, where is my opponent weak? Where is he exposed? Where can I look for the move? Well, of course, at the same time, Jortatus will also be thinking the opposite in terms of where am I vulnerable and where is it that Hammer is not as strong as me over the lap, and where can I absolutely try to blast away? But as they make the way down through 17 here, it's one more lap to go, and the Team Germany driver trying to go on the offensive as they make the way up the hill and in towards the braking zone shortly. Behind you see Emil Koopmans 2.5 seconds back in this battle for the lead. But meanwhile, the battle for what is P4 has come back into the attention spans of our drivers here, as we can see Hakon Gustad with an opportunity to fight his way to just be off of the podium. Looks up the inside here versus Willisey. Willisey leaves the door open, and Gustad comes in from quite far back, licks the stamp and sends it. Meanwhile, Phillips there takes the stiff, but he's not able to find the scent, and as they make the way out of 1 and in towards turn 3 shortly, Gustad just coming on through, absolutely sending it on the brakes and getting the job done. Meanwhile, Wayne Basson here, your silver leader, comfortably in the silver lead in P12 overall, 2 places ahead of Whittingham, who's moved up to P14, P2 in the silver class. Well, Basson right now letting Peregrino come on through, and Joe Newman just behind. But meanwhile, we must look from them to a bit further back for a brief moment. Lewis Willisey here being passed by Sean Dobie, who goes around the outside. I think that Dobie defending on the outside as Willisey tries to go on the offensive. Jack Ward versus Steve Hobbs. Well, Ward there, if you're wondering who's who, Ward on the outside into turn number 2 as the camera spins round, and Hobbs falling behind there as he tries to look for the offensive into turn 3. And this is in the battle for P9 through to P7, that's held by Sean Dobie there in the silver class. But in the end, no further change. But meanwhile, speaking of changes here, we look to the front of the field and we stay with them to the end now, as Jortatus still leading ahead of Philip Hammer. 4 attempts is the space between them as they head their way down the back straight and ready up for the braking zone at turn number 14. But it looks so here, it's only a couple of quarters, and we've been so narrow. Jortatus just simply needs to nail these corners and not make any wayward errors. He gets through turns 14 and 15 a-okay, and as he comes on down towards turns 16 and 17 here, it's a little ride on the curve, but it's not looking as though he's going to be adventurous at all. He powers out of 17A and heads to the timeline, and what's going to be the first race of the season, and it will go to Haroldas Jotatas here as the Lithuanian crosses the line. Only 2 tenths clear, but it's enough as he holds off Hammer for the win, with Emil Koopmans coming on through P3 to complete the golden overall podium, and there will be Hekon Gestad P4 ahead of Cameron Willesey P5, Giles Phillips P6 in his debut, Corey Lazarus P7 keeping Ryan Walker behind, and it'll be Lee Holmes ahead of Ricardo Jimenez, who complete the top 10 for the golden overall categories, as then we do look to Wayne Basson, who comes to the line here, and he is your silver winner today in round number 1 of the series, ahead of Liam Whittingham, brings on home P2 in the silver class, and then it will be David Biggerdike who finishes P3 in the silver class in the end, with all the commotion on the opening laps, catching so many drives as Alistair Hatcher and Chris Cole come through. Craig Tittleston the end off the podium in the silver class, and P5 in the silver class behind Hatcher, and then we can see Alexander Wilfert coming on through in what is P19 overall there, and in the gold class P14 ahead of Aaron Trester, who completes our overall top 20. Lewis Willesey, Sean Dowie, and then Steve Hobbs, followed up by Roxanne Marshall, Rob Exelby, as you see Zelby coming on through here in P25, Jack Ward, Steve Kershaw, and then Jason Mumford just crossing the line there, and then we do still have a couple more drives, including Chris Eddersford, who on his debut having a difficult start to his day, but finishing ahead of Glenn Humberstone with Joe Pinder behind, Sean Cranley Swash P32 in the HW Racing Machine, and then Craig Shield, the last of our finishers here, as he makes his way to the line in a damaged car for ATIP Tech Racing Team Cyan. He will be 33rd out of 44 starters, with Samuel K. Sprout being our non-finisher 4 laps down, having to retire the car due to damage. But indeed, 34 started, 33 made it to the timeline, but what a race to really set the tempo and set the standard high. And once we do get a brief breather, ladies and gentlemen, let's take you through those results. Of course, we'll be taking through those results as the overall results, and as they come up very shortly here, we can see that after 1 round of racing, 12 minutes of racing action here at the VIR circuit in the United States of America, Haroldas Jotatas taking the win in the overall and gold categories ahead of Over Limit Racing, I should say, ahead of Team Germany's Philip Hammer, who finished P2. Apex Misses is Emil Koopmans rounding off the gold podium there, and the overall podium ahead of Hekon Gestad for Ignium Motorsports, with Cameron Willesey completing the top 5. A good start to his campaign once again, and then Giles Phillips there for Phillips GP finishing at P6 ahead of what was Corey Lazarus from Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, with Ryan Walker for Satellite Racing completing the run to P8 ahead of Lee Holmes and Ricardo Jimenez, who took home the final overall top 10 spot. Alex Peregrina in the end finishing P11, best of the rest for Avatar Racing behind his teammate, and I think there was more out there, and Joe Newman P12, with then Wayne Basson, your silver winner today in the sprint race for FR20 Sim Racing, ahead of Shell V-Power Race Teams, Liam Whittingham, and then David Biggerdike bringing on home the podium P3 finish in the silver class P15 overall for DC Sim Racing. Alistair Hatcher, Chris Cole, Craig Tilleston, and as we carry on down there, we can see also Alexander Wilfer and Aaron Trester completing the overall top 20, with Lewis Willesey, Sean Dowie, Steve Hobbs, Roxanne Marshall, and Robbie Zelby completing the run to P25. A difficult race there for the 4 silver drives of Willesey, Dowie, Hobbs, and Marshall, all with great pace to be inside the top 5, but it wasn't to be, and they'll look to bounce back shortly. And Zelby as well falling out of favour, with Jack Wood P26 ahead of Steve Kershaw, Jason Mumford after a great start falling foul, and then we can see the rest of the finishers there. Chris Eddersford, Glenn Humberstone to complete the top 30, Joe Pinder, Sean Cranley Swash, Craig Shield, and then the one and only retiree of Blackout Motorsport New Zealand's Samuel Sproul P34. But those were the results, ladies and gentlemen, and well, now the break has concluded and we are heading back to the grid once again for the second race of the day. It is going to be the round 2 30-minute feature. So as we head into the feature race, this is how they line up. Thanks to a top 8 inverse grid, we see there Ryan Walker takes pole position for Satellite Racing, joined on the front row by Corey Lazarus P2. On the second row of the grid, it will be the pair of Giles Phillips and Karen Willesey, followed up by Hekon Gestad and Emil Koopmans on row number 3. Philip Howard from Team Germany lines up alongside his newly found rival from Over the Limit Racing, Haroldas Jotatas, on the 4th row, with Lee Holmes and Ricardo Jimenez completing the top 10. Alex Peregrina and Joe Newman start on the 6th row, and they are followed up by the pairing of Wayne Basson and Liam Whittingham, and it is David Biggerdike and Alistair Hatcher on the 8th row. Row 9 goes to Chris Cole and Craig Tillerston, with row 10 being occupied by Alexander Wilford and Aaron Tressler. They'll be looking to have a stronger race this time around from that 10th row. And on the 11th row, it's Lewis Willisey for Tressler Motorsport, joined by Clicks Racing's Sean Dobie. On row number 12, it'll be Steve Hobbs from FR20 Sim Racing, joined by 24-hour Punty People's Roxanne Marshall, who was looking strong in qualifying, no doubt about it, and be looking for greater favour and luck in this second race of the day. And then on the 13th row of the grid, it's Robert Zelby, joined by Jack Ward there, followed up by on the 14th row, Steve Kershaw and Jason Mumford, and then the top 30 being completed by the pair Chris Eddersford and Glenn Humberstone on the 15th row. Joe Pinder will line up P31 there on the 16th row, being joined by his contemporary, of which Sean Cranley Swash, and then on the final row of the grid, it will be Craig Shield and Samuel K. Sproul, with Sproul having it all to do from the back of the grid after a difficult sprint. But as the gridding process is still underway here, we've got 30 seconds to go. We do look to the blimp camera, ladies and gentlemen, and well, all our drivers gradually getting themselves set, but it is going to be a close-knit run into turn 1. Once again, you can be guaranteed of that, but I think now that all our drivers have had a feel of the first race of the season, they'll be looking to calm it down a little bit under braking, and perhaps we'll not see as many offs into turn 1. Not to say our drivers did a bad job, but that's the way it played out for them. I think just a few quick fire runs on the brakes there, but as this gridding process comes to a close, we've only got a couple of seconds before we await the lights. In fact, I do believe we have a slight delay to the lights here. In fact, the lights are now about to go on. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for round number 2, as immediately Corey Lazarus having a disastrous start and bogging down off the line, but Ryan Walker by comparison named the start. But look at Giles Phillips going on the offensive around the outside. We've already got a driver off in the background now, I'm not sure who that is, but it's all gone wrong for one, but as they all make the way out of the opening corner here. Most of our drivers all surviving it this time, as we see the long train of cars all go 2 or 3. Oh goodness me, there's contact there. I believe it's Sean Dobie going around and collecting along way Mumford as well. But meanwhile, we look back up to the front of the field as they come through turns 4 and 5 in quick formation. We can see here Heckel Gestad going on the offensive for P2. He goes up the inside there of Phillips and gets the move done, and Gestad finding the space nice and early, and Karen Willisey also coming through. I think they were the elbows out, as meanwhile Philip Hammer and Peregrina also in a bit of contact further back as they make their way out of the snake and into turns 7, 8 and 9. But as they come down here, Hammer side by side for a brief moment with Lee Holmes, but in the end Holmes taking the position off of him and not being able to get on through. But Hammer definitely right now being knocked down 2 places with some contact with Peregrina, and really find himself in a feisty field, as meanwhile Emil Koopmans here looking to defend versus Joe Newman. Newman around the outside on the break into 11. With the gold class drivers all going full attack mode already on this open lap. They know they want to get the places early on and then start to settle down. But as we see the long line of drivers making their way all the way down the back stretch and up towards turn number 14. Meanwhile in the silver class, it's no change at the front of it. Wayne Basson still leads to FR20 Sim Racing. However, David Biggerdite has moved up into P2 in the class P13. You see him there in the pink car just behind Basson. And then we do have Liam Whitton, who's lost 1 place to Biggerdite, but is still behind as that top 3 stays together, albeit they swap the places slightly. But as they make the way on down through turns 14, 15 into 16, 17, you can see the lack of overtaking opportunities here, and everybody has to be patient, although I say that. Meanwhile, further back, Steve Hobbs and Samuel Sproul going 2 wide down into 16. Hobbs on the inside to outside, Sproul looking to come back. We've got a drive off in front. Oh goodness me, I believe that is none other than Aaron Tressler, as they all come together. And well, as they make the way on through, the cameraman looks around and Steve Kershaw for Night and Day Racing being collected alongside Edison and Jack Ward, and we'll have to take a look back at that very shortly as to what exactly happened, but it's been a nightmare for them. Meanwhile, Roxanne Marshall for 24-hour Punchy People up the inside of Alexander Wilfert and getting the move done, but Wilfert trying to come back. Here's the gold driver going on the offensive and find himself battling hard with the silvers here today, as meanwhile Robert Zelby also coming up behind the Shell V-Power race team driver, trying to make some early ground in the 32 car, but finding himself now tucked in behind Wilfert and trying to do a little bit more damage to his rival in the class. But meanwhile at the front of the field, I can tell you that Brian Walker is still keeping Heckel Gestad at bay for now. We will take a look up there very shortly, but as we see Zelby falling back behind Wilfert. Meanwhile, we do look up to the aforementioned leader of this race, and we can see here Walker, the Scotsman, right now doing everything right as he comes through Oak Tree Corner once again, but Gestad is right there with him as they power their way down the back straight for the second time of asking. Now as they make the way on down, meanwhile we have heard that Biggerdite has got ahead of Basson, with Whittingham being involved in an incident with Chris Cole, and we'll take a look at the replay of that very shortly. fact, we've got quite a few things to get a replay of, and we will do so in due time. But meanwhile, Ryan Walker here right now, I think feeling a little bit comforted by the fact that Gustad not close enough to really go on the offensive into the next sequence of quarters here, but it could be the run into turn number 1 that will catch him out by comparison as they make the way on down through turn number 17. You can see behind there that we do have in close proximity Karen Willisey, who's looking at this fight from P3 and thinking about how he can get involved in the mix as they head up towards the next braking zone. But as they power their way up here across the timeline, Walker looking very vulnerable now as Gustad seemingly having a bit more of a straight line speed advantage. But as they head on to the brakes, well, Walker will just simply put the car on the inside and look to defend the potential cutback from Gustad. He goes for it, does Gustad, but he can't find the way there with Walker right in his face as they make the way into turns 3 and very shortly 4. But coming on through into left-hander at turn 3, they have got a little bit of traffic in front of them in the form of Kershaw, and they do have Lewis Willisey a bit further up the road by 10 seconds. This traffic could definitely play a factor in terms of this gold battle early on into the race, and well, it's a little bit different in terms of the tempo here, given the fact we don't normally see drivers been involved in the instance early on ending up being in towards the back of the pack and being caught up to by the race leaders here, but that's the way it's played out. And you can see just a bit further back, Philip Hammer taking a little sneak peek at Peregrina as they made the way in towards the snake and out of it. And I think right now the Team Germany driver looking for that opportunity, and this is what we've typically seen from Hammer in the season, is the fact that he tries to play it safe on the opening couple of laps and then builds up the pace and starts to pick off the places one by one. But of course the thing he's got to worry about right now behind him, he has got a threat in the form of Jotatas, and the Lithuanian is right on his heels as they make the way down, and Jotatas looking for the manoeuvre as you look to them in the rear of the picture. On the inside and the right you picture Jotatas, Hammer on the left. They headed towards turn 14. Hammer's got a nose there, but Jotatas getting closer and closer and gaining parity, but in the end he backs out, and I think right now sending the signal to Hammer, which is if you don't get a move on, I will very shortly. And meanwhile at the front of the field, Ryan Walker still looking vulnerable here to Gustad as they come through turn 16 and down in towards the end of this lap, but powering their way on through and up towards the next one. Well, Kershaw now only 1.5 seconds up the road. You can see there the gap between the back marker in terms of being a lap down effectively and the leaders is now being halved per lap, and that means that for Walker he's got to start and plot this out. But meanwhile I don't think he's going to be able to think about that at the moment. Gustad this time trying to go round the outside as meanwhile coming in very hot there Giles Phillips, as meanwhile Willisey coming on back and Willisey returning to P3, and I think Giles Phillips just coming in very hot on the brakes and Willisey giving him all the space a day, but Phillips is not giving this up, and as they come through turn 3 and into 4, Giles Phillips retakes P3 in a nice move for the Phillips GP driver, as meanwhile behind Willisey, Peregrina, Holmes, they're all stacking up together, and it's absolutely right now turning into a nip and tuck race. You have got, I kid you not, the top 10 separated by only a margin right now of 4 seconds. That's 4 tenths between each driver, and that goes to show you how fast and hard they're pushing and how much they all want this. But the thing for Phillips right now is he may end up becoming a bit of a cork in the bottle, because his move has given Gustad a 1 second buffer to Walker in terms of the fact he's able to now play with Walker, and meanwhile Phillips by comparison has to try and close that second up. But as they come down, Peregrina is going to look for an adventurous move, but he finds Kershaw, and as they all concertina together, it all ends in tears for Lee Holmes, and Philip Hammer, who gets caught up behind Holmes, is turned around, and I think there, well, I think it was Peregrina who immediately could be looked to as he might have kicked off the chain reaction there. Not saying the racing fault is with him necessarily, but the Spaniard being caught out by looking for the move on the inside and then having to back off with Kershaw right in the apex of turn number 12. I don't think expecting there to be a driver a lap down on the apex, and of course where could Kershaw go other than just try and get out of the way, but then he's got to make the corner like the rest of them. He can't just stop on the circuit, and right now for the Spaniard he's nursing a little wound to the front of the car, but nothing compared to the blow to the ego for some of our drivers, as meanwhile the racing continues at the front of the field, and Walker again under huge pressure as they make their way down to turn 1. And well, good number of you mentioned that Walker's doing very well to hold off Gustad right now, and I understand agree with you, but I think it's a question of when, not if, Gustad's going to be able to find a way to get fully alongside, and that is when Walker will be put to the ultimate test as they come into turn 3. But meanwhile, not to forget, we do have a silver class also racing this race. Here is your class leader in the form of David Biggerdike right now as he makes his way in towards turn number 3. The UKSimRacing driver who's got Wayne Basson right behind him. And the gap between the two of them standing currently at 8/10, albeit that gap has oscillated. It was previously a couple of seconds. It's come back down to just under a second here. But as they make the way out of turns at 4 and 5, we can see that mistake from Biggerdike as he comes through 5 and into 5A. Running wide, and now Basson is going to be all over him as they make the way underneath the gantry board here. And when it's going to be a drag race up towards turns 7, 8 and 9. And Basson's going for the move here. Biggerdike covers him off, and in the end Basson backs out. But as they make the way in towards turn 10 now, we jump on board with the FR20 SimRacing driver looking for the potential move, but you just see how much momentum he's had to strip out of the car with that worry about there being contact between the two of them. Of course, it's huge points for the pair, and meanwhile, well, all this is going on. If we now look behind Wayne Basson's car to the gearbox, look who that is behind, having gained 11 places overall. That is Roxanne Marshall, who has absolutely charged her way through the field after a difficult race number 1. Right now, the driver is absolutely on the offensive, and the 24-hour Punty People car is looking high and dry in terms of its opportunities as they make the way into turn 14. And you can see Hatcher behind, that's Alistair Hatcher, and next the gold driver Alexander Wilfert, who is on the back, but he's got the pressure of Samuel's brand, Rob Selby behind. So right now the silver drivers maybe just giving a little bit of pressure as they given a little bit of freedom, I should say, rather than pressure. Meanwhile, we've had it all go wrong for David Biggerdike as he's into the tyre barrier there on the exit of turn 16, and as he came on down into 17, it's all gone wrong with the DC Sim Racing driver, and now Wayne Basson is the class leader. But meanwhile, Roxanne Marshall is looking for the opportunity to turn 1. They go onto the brakes. This is the silver lead. Marshall on the inside goes for it all in, and what I think that would be a pass that even Daniel Ricciardo would be proud of there, licking the stamp and sending it from so far away. And Marshall takes the lead of the silver class with still another 20 minutes to go. But as they make the way out of turn 3 and into turn number 4, this is the brilliant opportunity to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that if you're enjoying the racing and you've got 1 or 2 drivers who have really taken your eye and attention with regards to their racing today, will voting for driver of the day will shortly be open if it's not already open, and you can vote for your driver of the day using the Google form that we have just linked in the official broadcast chat there. You just need to click on that, fill out the survey, and you will be able to vote for your driver of the day. And remember, submissions close as of midnight tonight as our drivers make the way on around here. But we look back up to the gold class, and it's not just about the silvers, as the top 10 in the gold class continues the fight too for now, and we've yet to take a look back at what happened earlier on in the racing, of course. But as our drivers make the way on down, Ricardo Jimenez keeping it cool. Meanwhile, we see here Phillips versus Peregrine as they head into the braking zone for turn 14-15. We've got a car off, and that is your race leader. That is Ryan Walker, who's gone on around, and Heckle Gestad has taken the lead of the class. But what exactly has happened between the two, and that is the big question. Well, as they come on down and around here, we may just get a quick breather to be able to inform you what exactly happened to Walker. And in fact, we do have a replay, and here it is. Well, coming on down, Gestad on the inside here, and I think Walker doing this of his own volition. He locked up the front left brake, hits the tyre barrier, and if he hadn't hit the tyre barrier, he would have still stayed in the lead, albeit a slowdown most likely. But the satellite racing driver, in the end, just feeling the pressure, hit him too hard, and it has caught him out here, and he drops to P10 overall. But meanwhile, as we return to the live pictures now, Walker may have fallen, but it is Gestad who has risen to the top of the standings. But here has got a Phillips right behind, and will now, I think Charles Phillips will be looking at this and starting to salivate at the prospect of a win. But Gestad, we know one thing, when he's out front and when he has not got anybody immediately behind him within a couple of attempts, he does start to naturally break away as they power their way onwards and down through the snake. But as they head up towards turn number 10 very gradually here, you can see right now behind Phillips really starting to bring together the rest of the gold class inside this top 10. And I think for Peregrina, it's all about trying to pick his way through as soon as possible. But the Avatar racing driver has got a lot of pressure on him, because if he can't find this move shortly, then it will be Joe Tartas who's going to be all over his six as they head towards the end of this lap. But we still have plenty of time to go, and of course, as this race wears on, it does mean that now tyre considerations covered. The amount of tyre degradation that our drivers are picking up, it is a hot circuit here, almost 40 degrees centigrade track temperature, and the tyre wear will build. And when they're pushing this hard from the very outset of the race, who is going to have enough compound to be able to run to the end? Well, Peregrina thinks he can go for the move here. He's going on the inside to outside run through 14. Meanwhile, Phillips stays there. It's side by side on corner exit, but Peregrina's done enough here to hold the inside through 15 and down. Phillips in a bit bit of contact there with Herodas Jatatas as they make their way down, and the over limit racing drive backs off. He's got Ricardo Jimenez just behind, and as they make their way out to 17 and towards the end of this lap, you see Cameron Willesee and Joe Newman also in the hunt here as they make their way onto the next lap. Meanwhile, to look from them, two other drivers right now will very shortly be coming down a little bit further in the order to a replay of what happened earlier between a couple of drivers. But we can see here Cameron Willesee just watching on behind Jimenez and Jatatas, and Jatatas covers off Jimenez into turn one. Willesee looks at the opportunity here. Jimenez has gone deep, and as they make their way out, Cameron Willesee trying to make the move count here, as meanwhile Phillips defend on the inside versus Jatatas. It's 2 by 2 as they come on down, and Willesee now trying to go all the way around the outside. This is going to be bold stuff on the Willesee racing driver. He slides a little bit on the exit curve, but he gets it done, and Cameron Willesee moves up into P5 as they come out of turn number 5 and up towards 6, 7, 8 and 9 they charge. But right now the Scotsman will know it may be a brief gain, given that he's next got to try and take on Jatatas or Phillips, depending on who's in the rear of that group. But as they make their way up towards 10, 7, 8 and 9, he'll just take what he can for the time being. But rolling the way on through it. Meanwhile, we do look a little bit further back to what is our silver drives of Wayne Basson, running P2 in the class ahead of Alistair Hatcher. And since Roxanne Marshall has made the move for the lead, we can see Marshall briefly off in the distance, staring at the bottom of the camera angle, and Basson right now falling backwards towards Alistair Hatcher, and Hatcher in return has got Alexander Wolfert behind as the drivers make the way on through. But this top three in the silver class right now stabilising to a degree, and it does look as though it is going to be a three-way battle to be on that podium, and we're not going to have any more outside forces in the silver class, with the fact that Glenn Humberstone by comparison is 7 seconds off and not closing at a rapid rate of knots. Although saying that at the moment, you never know what can happen towards the end of this race. And meanwhile, we look to the front of the field here, and Gristad still battling with Peregrina for the lead of the gold class, as I think Gristad there falling down the order, and Peregrina now takes the lead of the class there with a move through turns 15 into 16. He gets it done, and now he'll be trying to hold on and break away. I think Gristad having a brief moment on entry into turn 15 unless I'm mistaken, but either way the Avatar racing driver has found his way past the motorsport machine, and now as they head in towards turn number 1 once again, with still Phillips versus Jatatas, and Phillips right now really proving to be a thorn in everybody's side. If you come up behind Giles Phillips, there's one thing you are guaranteed to experience, and that is the full defensive wall of his car, because right now he is making that Porsche wide enough for 3 as they make the way out to turn number 3 and up towards 4, and he's playing everything right as we ride on board here with the over the limit racing drive. Oh goodness me, Gristad gets it wrong, coming through turn number 4 into 5. Jatatas on the inside, he tries to keep the throttle in here, but he can't quite do it as he has his nose cut off. It's a bit of rally cross there, and there's more contact behind. Meanwhile, we can see that Cameron Willesee makes it 3-1 for a brief moment. Oh goodness me, as they come up the hill, I can barely watch, ladies and gentlemen. Jatatas and Willesee side by side, and in the end the Lithuanian holds on. And how on earth have they both just made it out to that corner sequence? We'll never know. That is absolute testament to ability, but Jatatas is not done. He looks up the inside there versus Gristad. He can't find it as he backs off into Oak Tree Corner, but as they make the way all the way out towards turn number 14 once again, right now surely somebody is going to fall at the circuit at some point with the amount they're pushing one another, and we're only halfway in. And I think right now, if you've already cast your drive of the day vote, you may want to reconsider it, because I think we have got plenty still to come as our drivers make the way on. And right now Cameron Willesee, I think, is itching for a fight here with Joe Newman, just patiently watching behind him. With Joe Newman could have a bucket of popcorn in the cockpit of that SimRacing 97 machine, I think he would have got through it right now, for the simple reason that was a spectacle and a half, and the SimRacing driver would have had full view all the way through. But it's not over between Gristad and Jatatas here as they make the way up towards turn number 1 once again as they power the way on down. Gristad covering off the inside immediately here, but they have half the straight still to go. Phillips being given 1.7 seconds to play with in front. The battle for P3 is on, and Gristad defends it hard, but as they come on through the right hander, he goes a little bit deep. Jatatas looks back to the inside. It's a cutback, but it doesn't work. Meanwhile, saying that with Phillips, oh goodness me, the Phillips GP driver's gone on a round. We're not quite sure how that's happened. We'll try and get a replay of that shortly. But meanwhile, we do look back to the battle that's now for P2. And Heiko Gristad, after falling out of the top 2 place very moments ago at this very corner, now finding himself back there, albeit with Lady Luck potentially on his side, and now having to fight for it once more, as we see there Lewis Willesee staying off circuit, given the fact the gold pack is coming through. And as they make the way up towards turns 7, 8 and 9, meanwhile we can tell you that it's Alistair Hatch up up the inside of Wayne Basson for P2 in the silver car. Oh no! And Basson goes round, and with him, I believe he's collected what is Alexander Wilfer. There's the two drivers have come together on the corner exit, and I think Basson just losing the rear, and Wilfer ends up into the path of the wayward Basson. The two drivers there not able to avoid one another, but it's gone wrong for them. And we said earlier that Glenn Humberstone may not have been in the fight for P3 in the silver class, but in the end, we've been made to mark our words. He's P15 overall, but he takes P3 in the class with the mistake there of Basson, and right now continues to push on. He's got some space to his next silver driver, David Biggerdike, who is down in P18 overall, P4 in the class. But meanwhile, Chris Cole and Ryan Walker between the pair, as we see the UKSimRacing driver just carrying his way on through. But meanwhile, as we look from him to a little bit further up the road, we do in fact actually look down the road for a little bit, and it is Craig Schill here, who right now in P23 or P8 in the silver class, caught up with Jason Mumford closing, and caught up behind Alexander Wilfer as they make the way down the back straight, and Mumford trying to get a move on. Joe Pinder the same as well, but you can see Pinder there being closed up to by Lee Holmes as the A-Tip Racing driver tries to put pressure on the Indian Motorsports machine as they make the way up towards the next corner sequence. Heading onto the brakes very shortly. We do have a little bit of coming together further up the road, but we can see here Pinder right now giving the space on the inside and not fighting this too hard. Meanwhile, Giles Phillips into the pit lane with damage to the cars, we understand, as I look at my Conte booth window. But meanwhile, Heckel Gestad here, we look back to the battle for P2 overall in the gold class, and we see the Indian Motorsports driver making his way out to turn number 5 and keeping it together for now. But the Norwegian is only going to be able to do this so long surely before Jatatas has another shot at this P2 position. But as they make their way up towards turns 7, 8 and 9, you can see how right now Joe Newman's still just watching on, and Philip Hammer is closing. And there's one thing that's always inevitable with Philip Hammer: he will catch you at some point in the race. It doesn't matter if it's the start, the middle or the end. In this story, he will find a way to close up. And right now, recovery to P6 overall and in the gold class. As he comes on through, we've got further drama back because we have now a new leader in the silver class. It is Alistair Hatcher, and Roxanne Marshall has dropped all the way down to P14, P3 in the silver class. We're not sure how that's happened, but we do have a quick replay coming up, which I think will explain the story. Well, here we go then with Roxanne Marshall making her way into turn number 5. Goes a little bit deep, and in fact there's a bit of contact there with, I believe that's one of the Avatar machines. I'm not quite sure who that was. I think that may have been Ricardo Jimenez, who came into contact with Marshall, and well, it has cost Marshall very dear and out of the lead of the silver class. But it's now Alistair Hatch who leads the silver class in P11 overall, and I think right now he's not going to believe the fact he's leading and just needs to survive another 10 minutes of racing. But meanwhile, whilst we were looking at the replay, the move has been made by Joe Tartas on Gristad, and we can see Karen Willesee taking a stiffer move here into turn number 1. We can't quite find it as Gristad covers off the inside line, absolutely pinpoint precise. But as they make their way through 2 and into 3, well, meanwhile, Joe Newman and Philip Hammer right on the heels of the pair, and we will try and get a replay very shortly exactly how the move was done by Joe Tartas for P2. But as they head in towards turns 4 and 5 here, Gristad right now will definitely feel all the pressure building again, but this time it's Karen Willesee knocking on his door as they make their way out of 5A and into the snake of 6. Now powering their way all the way down and up towards turns 7, 8 and 9 here. We finally do get a brief breather as these guys calm it down for a brief moment, but I think this is the calm before the storm, as they say. And hello to Medbo in the YouTube chat there, and also to what is there, Nathan Scott. But as they make their way up towards turn number 10, we can see them through 10, they go into 11. Gristad feeling a bit more comfortable at this point. I don't think Willesee's able to enact as much pressure here on the first half of the lap. I think where Willesee is stronger by comparison is the end of the lap, particularly out of 17 into turn number 1. That's where he gains so much time by comparison. But Gristad right now looking comfortable, and as he makes his way and powers his way down towards turn at number 14, 15 in quick succession, we do have an opportunity to take a look back at how the move of P2 was done by Jatatas. Well, as they made the way down the back stretch here in towards turns 14 and 15, you'll see Jatatas on the inside to outside line here. Into the king of 14 he goes and just simply gets it down the braking. Gristad just does not have enough there, and I think this is the sign that right now our drivers are starting to feel the pain of where they pushed the cars hard early on. I would imagine Gristad will really be feeling that tyre degradation, and also Willesee to an extent. Joe Tartas, meanwhile, I think just has a slight edge on the pair and is able to keep the laps coming in, as it's a new fastest lap of the race from Peregrino at a 47.384, and then Joe Tartas and Gustave both setting their own personal best of 47.482 and 662 respectively there, so they are pushing on, but I think the tyres are starting to feel the pain in the brakes as well, and with that it becomes a bit more dicey now, and it becomes a bigger gamble from corner to corner. But as we do see the battle for P3 just subside for a brief moment. Meanwhile, we look a bit further back to Joe Pinder, who is chased after Wayne Basson, with Jason Mumford just ahead. And of course, earlier in this race, Wayne Basson in the lead of the silver class, dropped out of it and has fallen all the way down to this battle for P8 in the class, with Jason Mumford in leading position. But Pinder's into the pit lane. I think there might be some damage to the car. Mumford carrying on, and they do have Sean Crunny-Swash closing behind them, currently sitting 1 second off as they make their way onwards towards the next lap. Mumford covers off the inside. Basson looking around the outside here. Will he go for the cutback, or will he go the long way round? He looks at the cutback there, but he's covered off well by Mumford, who simply says, no, I see it coming. And as they make their way out to 1 and up towards 2 and 3, will mean, well, they battle on. And we have heard that Philip Hammer has found his way past Joe Newman for P5 in the gold class. And as they head up towards that turn 15, we can see Hammer already started to break away, and we take a quick look back at how the move was made. We can see there Heckel Gestag getting it wrong by looks into the 37 car. So there's a bit more to the story than meets the eye, and then simply Hammer seizing on the inside there with Newman overcooking under braking into 11 and 12 and leaving the door wide open. But what led to Gestag going off in the first place? I think this may just be a driver error as he came through. You can see a little bit of understeer crept in there on the run into 10, and in the end having to straight line the car and then get it under braking into turn 11. He got it stopped in time, but Newman in the end having to respect the fact that Gustave was rejoining, and that's what gave Hammer the opportunity as we return to the live pictures. And as they make their way up towards the next corner here onto another lap, they go into turn number 1. We do say hello to Aaron Trester Motorsport there in the YouTube chat, who says, I've had an absolute mare, and we're sorry to hear that, Aaron, but we do hope you have a better pair of races next time out. But no, it's been fantastic to see you on the grid today, and we look forward to seeing more of you in a week's time. But as we do see our drivers pressing on here in the closing stage of this race, 6 minutes to go plus the final lap, and meanwhile we can see here the battle for the silver class lead is on. And who better to have the battle between teammates of ATEC Tech Racing at Team Purple? It is Glenn Humberstone, who is chased after Alistair Hatcher from Team Cyan, and as they make their way into 2 and 3, all these two great friends off the circuit, rivalry are plenty on the circuit, and right now they are battling for the gold medal in the class as they make their way into turns 4 and 5. But coming through the left into right here, you can see how Hatcher really struggling at this point of the race. It does look as though the car just not quite comfortable for him by comparison as they make their way on down towards turns 7, 8 and 9. But then as they exit out, actually finding the better run as they come off the corner, and now it looks like Humberstone having to wait once again. But Roxanne Marshall also closing up here with Biggerdike behind by 7 tenths. I think we can have a 4-way fight for the win here if Hatcher plays his cards right defensively. He'll be pushing in what will be at this battle, but meanwhile Marshall gets it wrong then. The commentator's cut strikes. I was about to say, I think Marshall will be there in a couple of laps, but won't be if mistakes like that occur. And Biggerdike now moves up into P3 in the silver class as they make their way out of turn number 12. But coming on out and down of the round, we do look back up to the gold class here, and that is Corey Lazarus up the inside of Jimenez into turns 14 and 15. The Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver, they're coming storming through. I think Jimenez may have had a slowdown to serve there, or a mistake off a turn number 12, and that's cost him dear as they've made the way through the kick of 13 and onwards towards that quarter sequence. Only boats to go, but meanwhile Corey Lazarus moves up to P9 overall in the gold class, and now will try and go hunting down Samuel Sproul, his teammate of course, who is at 3.3 seconds clear just up the road. But as they head on through it and down towards turn number 1, meanwhile we do look from them back up to the battle between Philip Hammer and Heckel Gestad. Gestad trying to hold on to P4 now versus Hammer, and well, we know that Gestad can be very good on the defense, and we know that Hammer is very strong on the offense, so it is going to be another scenario of the unstoppable force meets the immovable object. But who is going to come out on top here with the time remaining? Joe Newman also just off of this, still watching, still waiting to pounce, and as they make their way in towards turn number 10 now, I think for Gestad it's all about just nailing the corner right and not making the same mistake twice, as that mistake cost him very dear earlier on. But if he heads onto the brakes now and he'll look comfortable, he'll also take pride in the fact that Joe Newman is right there as we jump aboard with the simracing driver, the 97 car all over the back of Hammer. But as they exit out, what's very interesting here, notice gets a really good exit and Hammer just simply breaks away as they make their way up towards turn 14. I think that's again a sign of just how much rear wing might be run on the simracing machine. In fact, Gestad now looking vulnerable a little bit to Hammer here, who takes a peek, but he can't really get alongside for the outside run. And as they make the way through 15, Newman again having to wait and watch, giving it everything here, but for all the speed Newman has in the corners and under braking, it's just not there on the final part, which is the straights. And as they come down through turn 17, well, Newman here I think will now be really trying to bait out a move by simply watching what happens in front and trying to get into a three-way fight. But as they head across the timeline, only a couple of laps to go, affecting what is now 2 laps remaining if we do our mathematics correct. But heading into the braking zone here, we can see that Hammer looking up the inside again of Gristad, just trying to get into the head of Gristad. Gristad proving resilient as always. Meanwhile, we look back to the not the GT3, my apologies, these are GT3 Cup cars, but at the same time they're not GT3 classes. And we can see here in the silver class, going Humberstone off, and Roxanne Marshall has taken the lead of the silver class once again, with Humberstone making a mistake as they made their way on through turn 15. And well, that corner has caught out many a driver here, but Roxanne Marshall now back into the lead of the class. And I don't think our cameraman will want to point the camera at Marshall simply because of the commentator's curse. Albeit we saw Marshall briefly there in the bottom of the camera, and David Biggerdike now looking to go on the move here for P2 with time running out. They have one more lap after this, we reckon, and we can see the battle to be on the podium at least, if not take the win in the silver class, is definitely amplifying as Marshall continues to charge on. But as our drivers make the way around, indeed I would agree with them, Medbo, it's almost as if nobody wants it in the silver class, but somebody's got to win the race surely. And as they make their way out to turn number 5, we can see Hatcher falling backwards compared to Ryan Walker's in between them, and Walker a lap down, just simply trying to bring the car to the end of the race to get some points on the board. But as they head up towards turns 7, 8 and 9, meanwhile we do look from them back to Sean Cranley Swash, who right now in P8 of the silver class, P21, looking to follow after Lee Holmes, the gold driver, keep Mumford at bay for the remainder of this race. And Jason Mumford closing little by little, as we do see Holmes there looking up the inside through the kick of 6A, and in charging through 7, 8 and 9, and get the pass of Wayne Basson, who's now falls back to Sean Cranley Swash by comparison. But meanwhile, whilst all this is playing out, we're on to the final lap for this man, and it is Alex Peregrina who leads on what is the 17th and final tour of the circuit in race conditions in the feature. The Alvarado Racing driver absolutely running away with proceedings. Meanwhile, Hammer on the inside there versus Hector Gristad into turn 1. He's got it done by looks of things now. Joe Newman side by side versus Gristad, but he's on the outside of 2 and 3. He's made to back off there into turn 3, and Newman not able to capitalise. But Hammer getting it down the inside on the braking into turn 1. Newman goes in hot, and there's contact with Gristad, and he goes round. Gristad soldiers on, albeit he rejoins, and that is going to release, I do believe, Emil Koopmans through, and Koopmans gaining 2 places for the incidents of 2 drives as the Apex Business driver now moves onwards into P5. He's got Gristad right behind him, and Newman absolutely going for it at the end, but going a little too hot into turn 4. And will for Gristad, I think right now, be absolutely fuming at the fact he's been knocked about, he's been knocked down the order, and he doesn't want to fall away like this. And Koopmans has got the Indian Motorsport driver all over him as they make their way up into turn 11. As they come through the first part of the Oak Tree complex here and into turn 12. Well, as they make the way through, Coombs will look to get the run off the corner. He does so quite effectively. The gap is 3.5 tenths. They start to get up to speed here, but as they power their way on down, I think Gristad will not have enough time of day to get this done. But meanwhile, speaking of one driver who right now has all the time of day to get to the final checkered flag for today, well, you can see him here. It's Alex Peregrina. He took the lead of the race midway through, and since then he's never looked back. And in a very closely contested gold field, this is going to feel like gold in his hands too as he comes to line. Here's your winner in the round 2 feature, Alex Peregrina from Spain. The Avatar Racing takes the win, 6 seconds clear of what is there Herodas Jotatus, who finishes P2 in a phenomenal drive for the Over the Limit Racing drive to make it a 1-2 combined in his races today. Karen Willisey at P3 in the end, ahead of Philip Hammer P4, and Emil Koopmans holds off Gristad to P5 with Joe Newman P7 behind. And then it is Samuel Sproul who takes P8 there for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, ahead of Corey Lazarus as they cross the timeline, the 2 teammates P8, P9 together. Ricardo Jimenez P10 ahead of Rob Zelby, who's best the rest in P11. And will somebody had to take the win in the silver class in the end, and as she makes her way out the final corner, she's going to do it. Roxanne Marshall comes to line, and the 24-hour Punty People driver takes the class win in the end in P12 overall by 5 seconds over David Biggerdike, who recovered brilliantly to P2 in the class P13, and Alistair Hatcher just a little bit bit further behind will finish P14 and P3 in the silver class. We see Hatch there for ATEC Racing Team Cyan ahead of Alexander Wilford, Steve Hodds P16, Glenn Humberstone P17, and then it will be Lee Holmes P18 ahead of Craig Schill, with Wayne Vassell completing the top 20. Not where he wanted to finish today. He'll know that for definite, but he'll know there's plenty of rounds to go. Sean Cranny Swash P21 for HW Racing, and then Jason Mumford comes on through the final corner to make it P22 and what is P9 in the silver class as he heads all the way through and to the timeline, albeit in a car I think he's run out of fuel. He's going to have to limp across the line. Has he got enough time? I think he's going to be pipped to the post as Pinder comes through. Joe Pinder, and also, what is that? Craig Tilliston beaten to the line, and Mumford literally limps his way across to finish what will be P11 in the silver class, P24 overall. Somebody get out and give him a little bit of push. Come on, folks, let's egg him on as he gets to the line. He will get there eventually. This will be the slowest finish for a driver here today, but thankfully, he's got a downhill gradient to support him as well, and he finally crosses the time line in P24. We also had a couple of drivers that finished a lap down, if not more, and that included what was Liam Whittingham, Steve Kershaw, Lewis Willesee, Ryan Walker, Chris Cole, Sean Dobie, and then at 4 laps down with a late retirement, it was Jack Ward, Giles Phillips, who retired 7 laps on the finish, Aaron Tressler retired 10 laps on the finish, and then Chris Eddersford, the final finisher, albeit retiring after 1 lap turn due to an early race incident. But what a race here today, there's no doubt about it, and as Matty Wild has posted in there in the YouTube chat as well, ladies and gentlemen, do not forget to vote for your driver of the day. It will close as of midnight tonight, and let us know what you thought in terms of who was your star today. Was it potentially Roxanne Marshall for battling back to the silver win in the feature race? Was it Geraldus Jotartus who took the fight to Philip Hammer and took the win in race number 1 and then recovered to P2 in race number 2 in the gold class? Or could it be, say, Heckel Gestad, with his brilliant defending not quite working out in the end, but still putting on a fantastic show and trying to dig in deep for Ignium Motorsport? Or perhaps you're looking to somebody else further down the field, such as the likes, for example, of Steve Hobbs, who despite everything battled to P4 in the feature race in the silver class. Well, it's up to you, of course, who you vote. We're not going to try and persuade you in any way, but what we will do in the meantime is take you through the race results of the second race of today, of course, subject to any stewards' inquiries. So after 30 minutes of racing in round 2 of the UKSimRacing Porsche Cup Season 6, here today at the Virginia International Raceway, Alex Peregrina taking the win for Avatar Racing by 6 seconds almost over Geraldus Jotartus, the over-limit racing driver fighting on strong and coming home in P2. Karen Willesee P3 there for Willesee Racing, putting in another strong performance ahead of Philip Hammer, the Team Germany driver, definitely finding that it's not going to all go his way today, and well, could that be the tone being set for the season in terms of how close it is in the gold class? Everybody coming out absolutely firing, with Emil Koemans completing the top 5. Heckel Gestad P6 for ED Motorsports ahead of Joe Newman, with Samuel Casebout P8 ahead of Corey Lazarus, the two teammates there finishing together, Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, and then at Ricardo Jimenez P10 there for Avatar Racing, completed the top 10 in the gold class and also overall. Best of the rest overall, Rob Zelby there in P11 for Shell V-Power Race Team, ahead of your silver winner in P12, Roxanne Marshall, the 24-hour Punty People driver, and it was DC Sim Races, David Bigadite ahead of ATEC Team Cyan, Alistair Hatcher, who completed the podium for the silver class. Alexander Wilfer, the gold driver there, P15, interrupting around the silvers. Steve Hobbs, the silver driver, ahead of his rival Glenn Humberstone. They finished P16 and P17, or P4, P5 in the class for FR20 Sim Racing and ATEC Purple, respectively. And then Lee Holmes completed our run to P18. Carrying on down the finishing order, Craig Schill and Wayne Basson completing the top 20 there, ahead of Sean Cranley Swash for the HW Racing driver, putting in 2 consistent performances. And then Joe Pinder ahead of the Ignium Motorsports driver, ahead of FR20 Sim Racing's Craig Tilliston, with the priority of Jason Mumford being the last of our finishers on the lead lap, albeit crawling across the line, having run out of fuel. A lap down and in, Liam Whittingham still finishing the race for Shell at V-Power Race Team P25, ahead of Steve Kershaw for Night and Day Racing, who just had bad luck today, and they'll be hoping for better luck next time. The same for Tresla Motorsports' Lewis Willesee, with Ryan Walker P28. They're the satellite racing driver. After a brilliant 15 minutes of racing from him, it all went wrong in the second half, but we can expect plenty more from the 95 driver, but ahead of what is there lap down finisher Chris Cole for DC Sim Racing P29, and then Sean Dobie finishing 2 laps down for Clicks Racing, completed the top 30. Retiring 5 laps for the fish, Jack Ward there for Willesey Racing P31, ahead of Phillips GP's Giles Phillips, who retired 8 laps in the end. 11 laps in the end, it was a retirement for Trezor Motorsports' Aaron Trester P33, and then Chris Edison for that unfortunate incident right at the start of the race, upsetting things for the privateer for UK Sim Racing, and it was P34 today in the feature, or a did not finish. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, those are the finishing positions for our second race of today. And, well, we're not quite done yet with the show, of course, because we've seen all of our drivers out of the circuit. But the question is, what do they think about the racing today and kicking off a new season of the Porsche Cup? Well, we'll find out with our post-round interviews coming up in approximately 10 minutes' time. Don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews with our selected drivers. We do apologise for the slight delay. We have just had to take some of our newer drivers through the interview procedure because they're getting used to the way we do it over the UKSimRacing Discord, but now they've been finally instructed on how it will proceed. We are going to be hearing from 3 of our newcomers today. New blood on circuit and new blood in the interview room. We start off from hearing from the silver driver of Wayne Basson in the FR20 Sim Racing machine, who brought home the win in the sprinting class, but didn't quite manage to bring it on home inside the top 5 in the feature. We'll then be hearing from DC Sim Race's David Bigadike in the silver class as well, with a double podium really going his way. And then we'll be hearing from the gold star Heroldus Joltatus from the Over Limit Racing team with the P1 in the sprint, but not quite able to bring home the win, but still a P2 in the feature. But as we get ready, we start off, of course, with Wayne Basson, and I believe, as in fact we do have a slight technical issue where he's not able to quite join us in the interview room at the moment. So what we are going to do instead is try to work around it very slightly. And if you give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get Wayne to come to us via a different means. Apologies for this, ladies and gentlemen. This always does happen on the night, but we can always work around it. But as we do wait for Wayne Basson to join us, in fact, he does join me now. Wayne, good evening to you, and I hope you can hear me.
Hi, Paul. How's it going?
Not too bad, thank you, but more about yourself, good sir. What a way to make your debut on the scene of the UK Sim Racing at Porsche Cup Season 6. A win in the sprint, and unfortunately a P7 in the feature, when I think a top 5 was at least on the cards. But still, you must be feeling quite positive about the way things played out today.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, my first go at one of these. I think the sprint race was more luck than judgment. If we're being honest, there was a lot of carnage ahead of me, and we capitalised on that. Steve and Craig in my team have helped me massively this week with setting up and tweaking the setup, and the car felt very very good. You know, fantastic. But then secondly, in the feature, I think a victim of my own success in the sprint because a couple of errors on my part that put us towards the back.
Oh, indeed, and whilst you may be acclimatising to the car and also making your debut, what a circuit to make your debut at, well, at VIR. Not an easy circuit by any means. How is it for you out there, given how narrow it is and how easy it is to slip off the circuit and onto that dreaded sloped grass?
Yeah, it's my first time out at Virginia, so that was a steep learning curve as well. Some of the overtakes the guys were doing on me, certainly up that the slalom up the hill, very very brave, makes you clench very hard onto the steering wheel. And as I learned in practice, if you make a mistake, you may as well head back to the pits. It's very costly.
Oh, indeed, and mistakes being ever so critical in terms of how things up. But thinking about qualifying, of course, a way to start off your day. We saw Roxanne Marshall and then creep to the front, but also we saw quite strong laps from yourself. How are you feeling with your qualifying session? Was there more out there, or were you pleased with where you positioned on the grid?
I probably could have pushed harder. I think today was just about getting a feel for it and playing it safe. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't at the back. We certainly weren't going to be pushing for the front with the pace I've got with this setup at the minute. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with certainly how that played out, and obviously we touched lucky with the sprint finish position that put us way ahead of where we should have started in the feature.
Indeed, and with that qualifying, of course, we saw Hobbs and Marshall take pole and second place, and you weren't too far behind qualifying at P5, and in the end, only what was 9 thousandths of a Steve Kershaw's lap to put him inside the top 20, where she started P21. But as the sprint got underway, you started to make some early ground, and it looked as though it was a bit chaotic in the midfield going into turn 1. A lot of drivers fell off the circuit, but you managed to steer clear of the dangers. Just take us through how that looked from your perspective, because I can't imagine it was going to be safe.
Smoky is how it looked. Turn 1, yeah, there was I think 4 or 5 cars slid across the track in front of me. I managed to touch lucky with I was just coming to the end of my braking zone, so we managed to avoid that. I think turn 4 and turn 5. I think at that point did I see my teammate Steve sideways into a barrier. So that wasn't great because I was hoping that he was going to be the highest scorer of our team, and we were going to get some safe points there. It started evening out there. I seemed to pull some gap, certainly in the final sector, the final few corners. So where I was losing time through the rest of the circuit, I was able to make it up in there, and that gave me a bit of a gap as the race went on. Just give me enough of a buffer that I didn't actually have to fight anyone for the majority of the sprint.
Well, indeed, and it looks like it was quite calm towards the end of the sprint race, and I do wonder, given the way the sprint plays out, normally it'd been a very fast race into how much pace you put in the car. You're not really trying to conserve the car too much. Going into the 30-minute feature, did you have in mind the need to conserve the tyres or protect the car at any point, or was it just approach the feature race the same way you approach the sprint?
I think this time out it was very much, it was all about conservation and getting to the finish. I didn't want to, on our first outing, end up in a wall or in a DNF. So both of them weren't push sessions per se. There was certainly more in the car, there was certainly more in me, but it would have come with risk. And as you say, at this track, there are no little penalties if you mess it up.
Oh, indeed. And speaking about the feature in a little bit more depth now as the race unfolded, we saw early on quite a good start from yourself, battling with David Biggerdike in the early stages of the race. But as the 30 minutes went on, we started to see a trend in the silver class, which you'll have to excuse me for saying this. Nobody wanted to win the race.
Well, I certainly wanted to. It's whether or not I think my want exceeded my skill. But yeah, I think certainly how I was feeling is when you make a mistake, you lose your your rhythm, and it's very hard to get the confidence back into your braking points. You start questioning whether or not you've overheated the front tyres, if you have a lock-up, or if you go too hard into a corner, and then you're very mindful of doing that again and again, or sliding off the track. So I did struggle with getting back into a rhythm after either an overtake. Some of the overtakes were scrappy in the feature. I think my car probably had several different colours of paint on it by the end of the race, and every time one of them happened, you have to have a second to try and get yourself back into the zone. So I was certainly easing off. I could see my lap times dropping off towards the end of the race. That was probably a combination of me being more cautious with my pace, as well as the drop off of the tyres.
Oh, most understandably, and particularly when you've been knocked about a little bit, not knowing whether there's also perhaps a small little bit of damage to the car that can also add up on top of everything else. But as the race went on, of course, taking the win in the sprint and then trying to battle on for the podium, and then a mistake just cost you dear when it was looking so strong for a double podium.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Completely my own fault, and I think I've ruined someone else's race in the process as well. I think there was a lot of rubbing going into turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. I was off my line because someone was creeping up my inside. I went probably onto the dirty side of the track, and as soon as I hit the loud pedal, the back went faster than the front, and I ended up in the wall. And then, of course, for 1 or 2 laps at that point, you start to question every little knock and slide in the car. If I've damaged is my tracking out? Is my wheel alignment damaged? Is my steering wheel in the right position? So that takes a couple of laps. After that point, I seen that Steve, my teammate, was catching me, and he's absolutely the quickest of our team. So I let him out, tried to cover the guy off behind him. I did for a little while, but then he got me as well.
We did see Steve Hobbs come charging on through, and Glenn Humberstone in the end able to pick his way past you, albeit not making too much more progress. But in the remainder of the race, we did see you start to get into a little bit of a nip and tuck with Craig Schill in front from ATIC Tech Racing, Team Cyan or Purple, one of the two, I can't quite remember off the top of my head. And we also saw Sean Cranny Swash closing in the late stages there. Was a bit of pressure starting to build on yourself, or was it just, okay, get the car to the end?
Oh no, I absolutely hate it. As soon as I start, my mirrors are full of a different car. It's a horrible feeling, and you start at every braking zone. You start looking backwards instead of forwards, and that brings errors. And then obviously the gaps close further, and then you feel more pressure, and then more mistakes come. So that's something I'm going to have to work on. Hopefully over the course of this season, I'll just get used to that. The standard of driving in this setup far exceeds what you would see in a standard official on iRacing, and that's going to take some getting used to.
Well, as time goes on to this season and you have plenty more opportunities to put pay to the practice, next time out we of course make our way to rounds 3 and 4, which are none other than the Monza Grand Prix circuit. How are you feeling for the infamous Monza Turn 1 circuit?
Yeah, can't wait. That might be a slow qualifying. Yeah, I think Monza is a cracking track. I've never done it in this car or this setup before. I'm looking forward to seeing that Virginia didn't have a lot of opportunities, despite the back straight being quite long. Didn't seem to feel a benefit in a tow. Monza, you probably will see more of a benefit of that, you would think. Yeah, turn 1, turn 2. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that particularly.
We'll be interested to see how you get on in a week's time, Wayne. But just before we do let you go, of course, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, absolutely. Funnily enough, I've got quite a lot of support. My missus is in the other room with the YouTube one. I've got a couple of friends and relatives, my mum, my dad, my stepdad watching it, and my missus has been getting messages saying how impressed they were. They're very new to this whole esports thing, as I've been trying to introduce them to this new world of people like us having the opportunity to enjoy this sport without having to pay hundreds of thousands of pounds to do so. So yeah, thank you very much to all of those guys for supporting me.
Well, it's fantastic to hear all the family are around you, and that's what makes it ever better, of course, when you've got the big family support network. And hello to them from the broadcast. But with that, Wayne, congratulations on your win in the sprint race day. Unfortunately, you couldn't quite marry it up with a top 5 or a podium finish in the feature, but we do look forward to seeing how you get on at Monza in a week's time.
Brilliant, Paul. Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
You too.
So hearing there from Wayne Basson, our silver driver today from FR20 Sim Racing, and how interesting the fortunes were over the course of the proceedings. If you looked at qualifying solely for our silver class, you would argue it would have been a shootout for the wins today between Roxanne Marshall and also what was Steve Kershaw. But as the race went on, in fact not Steve Kershaw, my apologies, it would have been Steve Hobbs, confusing the two Steves there. But as time went on, it was the slightly slower FR20 Sim Racing driver of Basson who would take the win in the sprint race and look strong to potentially be on the podium come the end of the feature. But one critical mistake being all the difference in the end. But of course the Virginia International Raceway Circuit taking no prisoners today and really putting all our drivers through their paces. And well, I think that is going to set us up for what is going to be a thriller at Monza, for the simple reason it's going to be a very different circuit and the pressure will be on there to nail it in the slipstream. And can Wayne find a way to do so and make another win appear on the cards? We'll have to wait and find out. As we now look ahead to our second interview of today, it's going to be none other than the other silver driver in our roster here of David Biggerdike from DC Sim Racing, and it's going to be quite interesting to hear his perspective on what should have been a day as well to potentially pick up wins, but instead a double podium all the same, and right now taking the highest number of points from all of our drivers over the course of the two races. But as we do wait for David to join us in the interview room, we're having to improvise slightly with our voice chat server that we're using. He joins me now. Good evening to you, David. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Albeit my voice has taken a bit of a battering, but less about me, more about you. Well done on your double podium tonight. A P3 in class in the sprint and a P2 in the feature. You must be feeling on top of the world, given you are the highest scorer combined today in the silver class.
Yeah, it was a good day out, considering I missed qualifying because my monitors decided that they didn't want to play. So I think I started 32nd overall. So yeah, I can't complain.
Oh, goodness me. Well, missing out on qualifying, I have to ask, of course, you're a newcomer to the series, so you're having to find your feet in amongst a number of veterans, including Roxanne Marshall and also Craig Schill, but also then not knowing where you fit into the pace, and you don't have the opportunity to show where you fit into the pace because you can't do qualifying. What does that make you think about when you go into the sprint race in terms of you're starting from the back? Is it just, we'll wait and see what happens, or was there a plan in mind in terms of, you know, I can pick these guys off?
I was just going to wait and see what happens, because you know what turn one can be like, and this track, all you have to do is dip a wheel on the grass and you seem to disappear into oblivion, which happened to me in the feature race. So I had a lap time in my head that I wanted to stick to and just stay out of trouble, and it seemed to work well.
Oh, indeed, and staying out of trouble, of course, we asked Wayne only moments ago, Wayne Basson, about what he thought of turn one and the amount of smoke going up. I have to wonder, when you were coming up to it from quite a long distance, did it look as though everybody had been vaping going into turn one, given the smoke from your perspective?
Yeah, it looked like they had a smoke machine down there. By the time I got down there, most people were on the grass. So I think there was probably between 5 and 10 cars maybe on the grass on both the first and second lap in the sprint race. So that helped me out, definitely, coming from so far back.
Well, as you made the ground then, so turn one out the way, and we saw you continue to make progress throughout, batting your way up into what was the podium places in the end. How did the car feel over the 12 minutes? Because 12 minutes is so difficult to get right. You need to push hard, but if you push a little bit too hard, you're going to fall off the circuit. And this circuit, of course, does not stop you when you fall off. When you go off, you are gone.
No, I didn't. In my practice, I didn't actually take into account the fuel on either side. So I was worried of fuel in the feature race, but I didn't really do many laps with the lower fuel. I was just kind of using the fuel for officials distance, really. So it was everything was a new experience, which seemed to work quite well in the end.
It all worked out in the first race of the day. A brief breather before going into the feature. Of course, the silver class not being affected by the top 8 inverted grid, but you would be starting quite close to your peers. What were your thoughts going into the feature? Were you potentially itching for that prospect of a win?
Yeah, I thought I had the win, and I gave it back a couple of times. I was sort of pulling away after maybe 5 or 6 laps, and then I dipped a wheel in the grass on the final corner. So I threw that away, but I had a good start. I remember taking at least one place at the start and nearly got myself into first. Seemed to have nailed the starter with this car, which is quite nice, because a lot of people seem to struggle and spin the rears up.
Well, it was a quick start for yourself, but unfortunately all that progress, as you say, being undermined by dipping a wheel wide at turn 17, but still, you didn't give up. We saw a number of drives from the leader of the class lose it big time. Yourself being one, Roxanne Marshall another, but it looked as though in the end Marshall would finish ahead of you, but not by much, and you were chasing hard in the closing stages.
No, I was looking at the lap times, and I thought I could do it. And there was a point where before I can't remember who was in front, but there was when I was in fourth, I managed to overtake Roxanne and get into third. But then I dipped a wheel on the grass, and half a lap later, the first and second took themselves out. So it's another missed opportunity. But the pace is there, and it feels good. So I think moving on the season, I've got a good chance.
Well, speaking of moving on, next 2 rounds in a week's time being held at the Italian Temple of Speed, that is Monza. How are you feeling for the circuit?
If I could get through turn 1, it's always a fun circuit. Going at the old Grand Prix tracks are always the best part of the sim for me. So don't know what my tactics are for turn 1 yet. Don't know whether to start from the pit lane and just pick my way through like I did this week.
We did work out today, but we look forward to seeing how you get on in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, David, is there anybody you would like to give a shout out to or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Got to say thank you to the other half for letting me sit up here with for a couple of hours on a night to practice and stuff. It's always good to be able to do something like this.
Well, I'm sure she'll appreciate the thank you and indeed the sacrifices that families make, particularly husbands and wives, for sim racing. But it's all for a great cause, and I'm glad to hear you've enjoyed yourself tonight. And well, David, congratulations on the double podium, and we look forward to seeing how you get on in a week's time at Monza.
Cheers, thanks for coming.
All the best. So hearing there from David Biggerdike, our silver driver today from DC Sim Racing, and making himself out as one of the firm early favourites in the class, with a double podium, having started from the back of the grid for the purposes of the sprint, not able to take part in qualifying, and very interested to hear how, despite all the incidents that occurred on the opening lap of the sprint and seizing on those opportunities, at the same time picking his way up the order at a circuit where it's difficult to overtake, and then losing out on the win in the feature race just with a couple of mistakes costing him dear. But I do wonder, as we head to a more traditional Grand Prix circuit next week, whether we could see the DC Sim Racing driver really put together a run of form that will set him apart from the field. Of course, it's early days yet, and with the tone of circuit changing next week, it is going to be a circuit that could see some drivers who weren't on the pace today jump into the order. But if Biggerdike's able to find a way to match the pace from today at Monza, I think he could be on to a winner and pick up his maiden win of the season. But we'll have to wait and see with regards to that. But in the meantime, he's been kept waiting, and he is our final interview of today, and we are going to very shortly be hearing from our gold driver, was absolutely in brilliant form from start to finish, and that is Geraldus Jotatis there, as we do see a couple of names incorrect on the screen there, but Jotatis' name is definitely correct by comparison. And as he gets ready to join us in the interview room, well, it'll be interesting to see how his perspective is on the battling in the gold class. And of course, taking the fight to our championship defender of Philip Hammer. But as we do wait to hear from our Lithuanian driver, well, it'll also be one of those considerations. What was it like being in that pack from start to finish of the feature race? But as he joins me now, Geraldus, can you hear me?
I can. Hello.
Good evening to you, good sir. And well, I have to ask, how are you feeling after taking the win in the sprint race and bringing on home second place in the feature, both overall and in the gold class?
Great. What else can I say?
Oh,
Feeling great.
well, indeed, you may be a man of only a couple of words, but to be fair, to hear you feeling great is fantastic. And it looked tough out there from start to finish. And well, I'm not sure if you're aware, you were able to take the fight to our reigning gold champion of Philip Hammer and keep him honest all the way throughout. Did you know he was our reigning champion?
So before joining, I had no idea, but after winning the first sprint race, I checked the chat and noticed that some people are actually almost rooting for me. Glad that someone will take the battle to him as well. So yeah, that's great as well.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. And now coming on to your own racing, of course, we saw in qualifying just how close it was between tries. But I have to ask you, your thoughts on the VIR circuit. Is this a circuit you normally go strongly at?
No, I wouldn't say so, but I did a lot of officials this week. Even if it was out for 2 days only, but I did like maybe 10 races. So that's what made me strong here.
We definitely looked strong, and in qualifying, 3 tenths was the gap between yourself and Hammer. I have to ask, was there a bit more time out there in qualifying for you, or was that the best you could get out the car?
Maybe a tenth, 1/10. So I was glad with my qualifying. I put a good lap for my standards, but when I saw, that there was a gap was 3/10, I didn't, it seemed like it didn't look too optimistic for me.
Well, qualifying may not have been overly optimistic in terms of the lap time versus Hammer, but then the race, you absolutely charged into turn 1 and looking for the move immediately. Was that your plan, thinking that you needed to get the move done before you cleared the first couple of corners?
It became my plan after the launch. Uh, yeah, I wasn't thinking about, making the move, that I have to make a move in the first corner, but once I got that launch, I understood that that is basically my only chance to take the win, because overtaking here is not simple, and especially against, a driver uh, that was 3/10 faster in the qualifying.
Well, you made the move, you made it stick, and then for the remainder of the race, the two of you just gradually broke away over the duration. The pressure was constantly on, but you never seemed to give in, and at the end of the race, it was only 2.5 tenths between the two of you. Just take us through your feelings over those 12 minutes of racing. The pressure must have been horrific.
So again, those 10 official races definitely came in here as well, to the rescue, because almost in all of those races I was in similar situations where I just had to keep it together, still be fast but safe, and keep it together. So that's that was my thinking, and that's what I did.
Well, you executed it perfectly, and then coming on to the feature race, of course, the top 8 inversion mean that you would start P8, and what a start to the race. 15 minutes, the top 10 separated by 4 seconds, and you were right in the middle of it all. Just when you're racing at VIR, it is so tight around here. Surely the margins for error must have been minimal.
I'm sure. So, uh, when to, so first thing first, at the start, I had like one car ahead of me that failed to launch properly, and I actually had to hit on the brakes after, making my launch. So I lost a couple positions there as well. So I wasn't 8 where I started. I was maybe about 10th or so. But yeah, the margins are very slim. So my approach was, just take it extra careful. Don't go for any moves. And actually, I think I went all the way up to from 10th to 2nd, uh, basically by making one proper actual overtake.
Oh, indeed. We saw a number of drivers fall away, but making it the overtaking in, battling hard with Hekon Grestad from what was around the 18th minute to the very closing stages. I mean, when you're both running that fast, it's going to come down to a tiny mistake, but you never seem to make a major mistake when it mattered most. How were the tyres at the end of the race? They must have been absolutely bare.
So I was thinking that tires were great. Like during around the time where I was trying to make that overtake, it was like just fine. Didn't have any issues at all. But then with several laps left after the overtake, I tried to push some, to maybe close the gap to Alex in P1, and then I noticed that can't do anything on those tires.
Oh, indeed. And Alex in the end breaking away to take the win by quite a margin come the finish. It was a margin in the end of what was 5.8 seconds. But still, I think a lot of that is a result of you having to battle your way up to P2. So with a P1 and a P2, that makes you our championship leader going into next week's races at Monza. How are you feeling for the Italian Temple of Speed?
Not my favorite track. I really don't like these tracks with, where you rely on slipstream. Where are a lot of straights and not a lot of corners. Much prefer a track like VIR. But again, my plan is to do a lot of officials. I I learn, what to do with that slipstream.
Well, we hope the officials go well, and we look forward to seeing you on circuit in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you would like to say thank you to or give a shout out to on the broadcast this evening?
Sure. First of all, thank you guys for organizing this event. It seems top notch, and as well, shout out to my team Over the Limit Racing.
Well, I'm sure your teammates will be very pleased to hear your gratitude and the shout out. And well, we're very grateful to have you on circuit and spicing things up at the front of the field. But with that, Heraldus, congratulations on your double podium, including the win in the sprint today. And we look forward to seeing you on circuit in a week's time in Italy.
Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
You too.
So hearing there from our final interview of today, Heraldus Jotatus, the gold class driver from Over the Limit Racing, who in the end pushed it to the absolute limit. And as we heard in particular with regards to the feature race, after making the move count for P2 versus Hekon Gustad and with Cameron Willesey coming up behind, he then went in the pursuit of Alex Peregrina, only to find he couldn't close up to the Spaniard as he had taken the life out of the tyres, and the tyres were absolutely bare with regards to the pace they had left to offer. But that goes to show you and to highlight just how hard all of our gold drivers had to push in the opening half of the feature race, and raising that point that the feature race is just as much about tyre conservation as it is about making those early gains for track position. But with this being a highly technical circuit, and with next week's circuit being slipstream dominated at Monza, it'll be interesting to see whether the change of circuit type will favour certain drivers or not. And I get the feeling that Jotatus may not enjoy the Monza circuit, but I think still he will try to leverage as much as he can and carry on his winning ways, or at least being on the podium in both of the races. But of course, time will tell. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our interviews for this evening. And just to refresh you, we firstly heard from Wayne Basson, the silver class driver in the number 9 FR20 Sim Racing machine. And then we heard from other silver driver of DC Sim Racing's David Bigadike in the number 13 car, before we then came on to our sole gold interview for this evening, Heraldus Jotatus in the number 45 from Over the Limit Racing. And of course, we'll look to bring you post-round interviews after each pair of rounds this season. And we always can speak up to 4 of our drivers, and it's very interesting to hear their thoughts, and thank you to them for tonight. And definitely I think they've echoed the sentiment we've all felt, that this has been the ultimate way to get season 6 underway. But with that, of course, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the UK Sim Racing community, well, you can go firstly to our official website, that is uksimracing.co.uk, in order to find out all the latest news and information regarding our series. Alternatively, if you don't want to go to our website per se, but perhaps you do want to follow us on social media, the best place to do so is on Twitter. If you go to twitter.com/UKSimRacing_, you can keep up to date with all the latest upcoming series hosted by UK Sim Racing, and also our exploits in official esports events, because of course we do enter as an official esports motorsporting team. We'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our affiliates. which we do have 5 on there on screen. And reading from left to right, we firstly do have Swallow Meadow Sim Racing Coaching. The creator of the motivated checklist, Swallow Meadow Sim Racing Coaching, can help take your sim racing driving to the next level. Whether you are looking to gain a 10th, improve your approach to the racing line, or develop your consistency, Swallow Meadow has a coaching course to meet your needs. Plus, with Swallow Meadow being a multi-time champion of official iRacing series, including the 2021 PESCC, you know you are receiving coaching from the very best in the industry. We also have there Race Anywhere, the provider of curated sim racing equipment and only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. Also Demon Tweets, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide. So no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweets could help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions. We also have our latest affiliate of SimLab, the leading manufacturer of high quality sim racing related hardware. As a proud partner of Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports, SimLab aims to enhance virtual racing experiences with uncompromising solutions that push the boundaries of esports. And then lastly, we do have Amazon, of course, the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including but not limited to Amazon Prime, Fire tablets, and Amazon Alexa. As we now look ahead to next time, in a week's time, it'll be rounds 3 and 4, and it'll be at none other than the Monza Grand Prix circuit in Italy. The Temple of Speed awaits our drivers, and make sure you're there on Thursday, the 30th of March, where the story continues, and we get to see whether it's going to be the same names towards the front, and we start to establish firm favourites, or whether our gold and silver classes will have a shake-up, and therefore it's all going to be wide open. We'll find out then, but until then, we have been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain's Bit, depending on what media you follow me on. And speaking of media, if you haven't subscribed to the UK Sim Racing YouTube channel, we do recommend you do so today in order to stay up to date of all the latest broadcasts. What of the fact we do have the next rendition of the GT3 League coming up towards the end of this month. And well, as time wears on, of course, ladies and gentlemen, you don't want to miss a single broadcast. But until next week and next time we go racing, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.